Chapter 31. Duel 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Duel 5, there was some information I wanted to extract from Lifa the Elusive. So I unmasked myself. I wouldn't be able to talk to him while disguised as the Berserker. As soon as fictional hell began to unravel, I quickly began to lock Ice Sovereign deep inside my body. Even with the Hunter trait activated, I was weaker than I was in fictional hell, so there was no telling what kind of strain Ice Sovereign would put on my body if I kept it activated for even a moment. As a result, my skin had regained its original color. Don't do anything stupid. Oh, of course. From now on, answer what I ask you, I said in a cynical tone as I narrowed my eyes. Lifa was terrified. Like a common idiom, he was shaking like a leaf. The tremors were transmitted through my hands as I held his head. Yes, yes. I'll answer anything. I will answer, so please, how much does Alice Carroll know about me? If Alice found out about me at this point in the story, it would be game over. Thus, the amount of information she had about me was of great importance to me. I was the weakest extra with the worst potential in all of Magic Knight of M.Raken. In other words, in order to defeat the evil god Nephid, I had to focus on becoming stronger as quickly as possible. That was why I prioritized raising physical training efficiency and magical training efficiency first, but later on, when they've reached their maximum potential, it'd be better to increase versus human combat power as well, to help me stand a chance against dark forces like Alice. So, until I reached the level where I could stand up to Alice, I needed to hide my identity as much as possible. The reason why I put up an ice wall before capturing Lifa was to prevent someone from witnessing this. It's time for me to take care of things. Child, how do you know Alice? Frost Explosion, Ice Element, 5, Kaha. Ka. I triggered a short burst of a Frost Explosion, and froze his right arm. If he tried to remove the ice, his right arm would be hacked off. Just answer me. I don't know anything. I don't know. Child, Alice is still trying to find you. Lifa gritted his teeth and cried while enduring the pain. He responded politely. He and Alice had a relationship where it wouldn't be surprising if one of them betrayed the other at any time, and he was a light talker in the first place. I expected this for now. The student evaluation data of M.Raken Academy was kept under strict security. The two who played the biggest role in this were the headmistress Elena, and the magic of Arya, the tower master of the Hegel Magic Tower, which was in a contractual relationship with the academy. As long as they were there, I didn't have to worry about my information being leaked. Then next. What is Alice's plan? Tell me how she intends to find me. Since it was me, not Ian Fairytale, who was hunting the demons, it was difficult to predict what Alice would do in the future. She wasn't the type to act thoughtlessly, except for when she was around cute things, so she is definitely up to something. Just looking at how the final boss of Act 6, Chapter 3 of Magic Knight of M.Raken had already appeared, I could guess. The story is going to get really twisted. I don't know, that kind of thing. I shot another short burst of Frost Explosion at Lifa's leg. Kwaaha. Kaaha. Lifa screamed at the top of his lungs. However, he didn't show the slightest sign of defiance. Lifa the Elusive, Psychology. Dreadfully frightened of you. Yes, he was afraid. It must be because my hand was holding Lifa's head at the moment. If I conjure magic with this hand at any time, it would crack open his skull and he would die instantly. Ugh, really, I don't know. He really didn't seem to know. I wasn't surprised that there was little information to dig up. Alice wasn't the type of person to go around talking about her own plans, much less to a person she didn't have a close relationship with. The only thing I could call a harvest this time was that Alice still hasn't figured out my true identity yet. Since I answered your question, are you sparing my life? What are you talking about? When did I say I was going to let you live? Ha! It seemed that he was seriously mistaken. I never said that I would let him live if he answered all my questions. You were going to toy with me, the students, the professors, and kill them all, right? Human life was like a toy to him. Now and in the future, he would live with that murderous intent. Why would I let a guy like that live? Ah! Before Lifa could beg for his life, I shot another short burst of frost explosion at the back of his head. Quang! There was a small explosion of light blue cold air, and in the blink of an eye, I saw Lifa's mangled upper body trapped in a block of ice. After dispelling the ice mana that had turned into a block of ice, Lifa fell to the ground, his whole body turned into grey powder and piled up on the floor like cigarette ash. Phew! Only then did I relax my expression. Successfully took care of the problem. That was really fortunate. Congratulations. You've defeated the demon, Lifa the elusive, LV-130, and gained EXP. Level up. Your level has increased to 56. You've gained 10 stat points. You have unlocked the achievement. An illusion within an illusion. You have gained an additional 10 bonus stat points. It was Act 3, Chapter 1, Duel, where I thought I'd just measure my combat ability and move on. But I somehow ended up getting 20 stat points. However, more importantly, I already got this, an ashen bracelet laid on the ground where Lifa the elusive had disappeared. I picked it up. You have obtained the loot, Elemental Bracelet. Elemental Bracelet increases the elemental resistance of certain elements by 40, excluding the light and darkness elements. Rank. Tier 1 effect duration. 24 hours cooldown time. 24 hours Elemental Bracelet. Naturally, I thought I'd get this in the second semester. For now, I had to think about my stat points and the Elemental Bracelet later. There were other things I had to take care of first. My body suddenly grew heavy. The Hunter trait had been deactivated. Before that, I sensed mana around me, but there wasn't much. Still, there was nothing wrong with being safe. Afterwards, I put on the mask and the hood on my head and transformed into the Berserker. I dispelled the ice barrier placed on Professor Fernando and the ice wall that imprisoned me. As soon as the ice wall dispersed into bluish powder, I turned my head toward Professor Fernando. If I took his unconscious body out now, the situation would be over. Although, I was sure Professor Fernando must have instructed his associate professor to come up to the roof after a certain amount of time had passed. However, I couldn't just leave a dying man on the roof without confirmation. I must turn the fainted Professor Fernando over to the administration without revealing my presence. A professor was injured. If it was discovered that I was with Professor Fernando, I would be summoned by the Truth Investigation Committee for questioning. The Student Council President was also included in the emergency contact list of the Truth Investigation Committee, so it was better to avoid that situation as much as possible. You worked hard, Professor. There was an easy way out. I headed for the rooftop entrance with Professor Fernando on my back. ***** Luz Eltania was walking down the hallway of Duke Hall. The duel had been her triumph. At first, she was going to go easy on Ian Fairytale for his courage in challenging her to a duel, but then she simply finished him off with a 5-star water magic. This was because Isaac bothered her too much. He had nosebleeds every day and worked hard, but eventually, he met a dead end and declared his surrender. How upset would he be? With a face of resigned acceptance, Isaac patted Tristan on the shoulder, acknowledged him, and left. The fact that he was trying so hard to look nonchalant, as if he was relieved, made her feel even more sorry for him. She hadn't decided what to say to him, but she wanted to meet him. She quickly ended her duel and swiftly stepped out into the hallway so as not to be stopped by the guard wizards. Ever since she was 10 years old, she had not been interested in others, so she was not good at consolation or encouragement. Even so, if she could pretend to run into Isaac by chance, and then say something along the lines of "cheer up," she felt like he would feel at ease. "Where are you?" But Isaac was nowhere to be seen. Had he already left Duke Hall? No, he wasn't allowed to leave Duke Hall while the dueling evaluation was in progress, which meant he was still somewhere in the building. "I wonder where he is." Luce headed for the stairs. Since Isaac wasn't on this floor, he was probably on the upper floor or on the roof. "Student Luce. What are you doing here?" Luce ran into an associate professor who was coming toward the stairs from the opposite direction. He was accompanied by examiners and 5 healers. Seeing them appear in a group, Luce was puzzled. "The dueling evaluation has been suspended. Please return to your seats and comply with academic regulations." "Ha!" The associate professor spoke in a polite yet urgent voice. She couldn't understand what was going on, but it was clear that something unexpectedly bad had happened. They passed Luce and began to climb the stairs. Isaac was probably up there as well. Luce contemplated whether to follow them up or not. "Student Dorothy." Just then, a female student came down from the top of the stairs. She stopped the associate professor's party in the middle of the stairwell. Luce's eyes widened in surprise when she saw the pretty schoolgirl with long light purple hair wearing a witch's hat. Her cosmic, star-shaped pupils seemed otherworldly. This was the same senior who had recently been spending time at Isaac's training grounds every day. "Wait for a moment," Dorothy said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips as she looked at Luce and the associate professor's party standing below. "Wait. Yes, please wait a moment. Why all of a sudden?" Luce and the associate professor's party couldn't understand. "Because it's dangerous now." Then. Closing her eyes, Dorothy snapped her fingers and began to drum a rhythm. The associate professor's party watched her eccentricity from afar. Dorothy Hartnova was a force to be reckoned with at M.Riken Academy, a genius whose talents seemed to have come from the very heavens themselves, and the pride of the academy. That was why, when she used the word dangerous, it was unavoidable that the associate professor and his party felt uneasy. Still, as a professor, he couldn't be influenced by the words of a student. "Student Dorothy," said Philip Meltron, the professor in charge of the magic department's freshman class A, as he stepped forward. "It's over now." Dorothy opened her eyes and moved out of their way. Her eccentricity was over in just 5 seconds. The associate professor and his party did not understand why, but they started climbing the stairs again. After climbing to the 2nd floor, Professor Fernando. A man collapsed in the hallway had caught their eyes. It was Professor Fernando, covered in wounds and unconscious. His body bore the traces of a fierce battle. Beside him, Dorothy's familiar was casting a healing spell on Fernando. A white cat with a pink ribbon on its tail was rubbing its own cheek against Fernando's. "He needs healing magic. Please move Professor Fernando quickly." Getting Fernando to a hospital room took precedence over assessing the situation. The associate professor gave urgent instructions to the healers. Meanwhile, Dorothy stood leaning against the corner, listening to the bustle of the associate professor's party. Soon after, the healing squad passed her on their way down the stairs, carrying Fernando on a stretcher. The rest of the group seemed to be heading for the roof. Only then did Dorothy begin to descend the stairs. "You're inexperienced, President. You should thank this older sister for buying you time to escape." Dorothy shrugged her shoulders triumphantly. "Isaac. There must be a reason why such a strong being was hiding his identity." Whatever that reason was, Dorothy decided to keep his secret. The fact that he had fought to protect the people of the academy was enough to convince her. It was natural for her to be considerate, thought Dorothy. "Ha! You." As Dorothy descended the stairs, she met the eyes of a schoolgirl who had been watching her. Her rose gold hair was delicate, and her detailed features were very elegant. The morpho butterfly dot-colored hair straps on either side of her head looked exquisite. Dorothy knew who she was. She was Luce Eltania, the undisputed head among the first-year students of the magic department. She'd often spotted her watching Isaac before he went to training. She was a cute junior, perhaps she had a crush on him. Dorothy tilted her head with a bright smile on her face. "Do you have something to do with me? I was just wondering why Senior was here, since Duke Hall should be off-limits right now." "Yeah, that's right. However, rules are meaningless to me." Luce frowned at her. "What the hell? Did something happen upstairs?" "None of your business, cute junior. After replying in a playful voice, Dorothy walked past Luce. Luce's gaze followed her wordlessly. Ah! Suddenly, Dorothy realized something and stopped in her tracks to look back at Luce. "Your crush, it's going to be a little difficult." "What do you mean?" Luce asked with a question mark hovering over her head. Dorothy smirked in amusement and walked away with light steps. Chapter 32. Duel. Interlude. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Duel, interlude. Fortunately, the plan was successful and turned out smoothly. With Professor Fernando on my back, I stepped through the exit of the rooftop, and after I was sure no one was nearby, I carefully placed him on the ground. I then took off the cloak of disguise and placed it in my magic pouch, and carried him back down the stairs. When I was certain we were close enough to the arena, I gently placed him in the hallway. I took out firecrackers from my magic pouch. Since I had to go around hiding my identity, I made sure to stock up on tools that would distract others. Then, using a fire generation scroll, I lit the fuse and placed the firecrackers nearby. If the firecrackers exploded, the proctor or security guard who heard the sound would immediately notice and rush here. After everything was set up, I ran down the hallway and headed for the window. Could it be because of the hellish PT performance? I jumped out the window like a stuntman and quickly ran away. If I couldn't hear the sound of the firecrackers anymore, then nothing more needs to be said. I sprinted all the way to the first-floor training room. Since the aisles were wide open, I was able to enter naturally and blend in with the students. A few moments later, I realized my plan had worked when I heard that Professor Fernando had been sent away. I also heard that dueling evaluation was suspended, and it was easy to guess the reason. Professor Fernando probably said something like this to his associate professor: "If I do not come back for a certain period of time, stop the dueling evaluation and go up to the roof with the combat troops." It was a guess I had made earlier, but I guess I was right. It would have been fine if I had just left him on the roof. Still, I didn't have a choice. Unless there was concrete evidence, speculation was just speculation. Anyway, let's consider the result. Things worked out the way I thought they would, right? Well, a good thing is a good thing. I didn't feel the need to overthink it. Suddenly, an announcement was made that the dueling evaluation would resume after the truth of this incident was clearly revealed. A few days later, the findings of the Truth Investigation Committee's investigation were posted on the bulletin board in Orphan Hall, a dormitory building for the Magic Department. The Truth Investigation Committee investigated the statements of those involved in the case, the traces of mana, and more. They were able to conclude that a demon appeared and was eliminated. The person who played an active part was the suspicious individual who had appeared during the class placement evaluation. That would be me in the form of a black monster. The details of the investigation were kept secret, so it was unclear who was involved in the case or what happened. In any case, it was fortunate that there was nothing about Isaac. Now the atmosphere is getting worse. The atmosphere of the academy had sunk to an all-time low. Demons, who were considered once-in-a lifetime natural disasters, had appeared several times in such a short period of time. The students had repeated discussions about why demons appeared so often. Some suggested that it was just bad luck, while others believed that it's because people with high mana gathered together, which attracted the demons. By the way, once again, the Academy authorities were planning to make a concerted effort to settle the issue regarding the frequent appearance of demons. However, after the Thunderbird subjugation, the situation would spiral out of control, and eventually, even the Imperial Knights would be called in to investigate the case. My condolences to the faculty and the Academy authorities, who would be facing an even harder time in the future. Ah, that's right, something like that happened. I suddenly remembered what Kaya had said to me when she came to me with a shocked expression. Sir Isaac. The black monster appeared during the class placement evaluation and now again. Ha! Could it be that it's a demon who betrayed the other demons? Of course, she was an idiot, so I just let it go. Status, name. Isaac LV. Gender. Male year. First title. Freshman mana. 1100/1300, mana recovery speed, C, stamina, C+, strength, C+, intelligence, C, willpower, B+, potential. Details. Combat skills, Elemental Series 1. Ice, Elemental Firepower, B. Elemental Efficiency, B. Elemental Synergy, B. Elemental Series 2, Locked, Own Skills, Active, 1, Ice Generation, B, /5, Black Ice, B. 2, Ice Curtain, C+, 1, Cold Divergence, B. 1, Basic Protection Magic, D, 4, Frost Fire, C. 4, Ice Wall, C. 5, Frost Explosion, D, 2, Frost Wave, C. Passive, 7, Psychological Insight, 5, Demon Detection, 9, Ice Sovereign Skill Tree. Details. Unique attributes, Hunter. In the middle of the quiet night, I once again came to the corner of the butterfly garden to train. I checked my status window. The ultimate buff skill of the ice element, the 9-star passive skill, Ice Sovereign, was still on my list of skills. Regardless of the Hunter effect, I had acquired it after fulfilling the acquisition conditions. Awesome. It was a great outcome. The day I defeated Leafa the Elusive, I noticed that Ice Sovereign still remained in the status window, so I started shadowboxing while kicking up a fuss. If I could handle Ice Sovereign properly, my power would increase by leaps and bounds. I already have the Elemental Bracelet. The Elemental Bracelet was a magic tool that, when worn on the wrist, would greatly increase one's resistance to any single element except for the light and darkness elements. I tried it with a 2-star magic scroll right away, but the scroll wasn't very effective, which made it difficult to accurately test. After the dueling evaluation, it was time for Act 3, Chapter 2, Familiar of Magic Knight of M. Raken. To begin. At that time, when I have my own familiar, I'll have to ask them to cast spells on me, so I could test it properly. Using the newly acquired stat points, I invested 10 in physical training efficiency, and 10 in learning efficiency, and with that, they increased to B+ and C+ grades respectively. Now, the rate at which my stamina and strength will develop would be faster than most of the night department students who regularly worked out. Phew. I took a deep breath and calmed my emotions. It was time to retest the Ice Sovereign skill that I had recently tried out. I'm nervous. I almost high. 5 Great King Yomra, also known as Yomra, Daewon, was the Korean god of the dead. He was the 5th of the 10 kings of the underworld, called Shur. And was believed to be the supreme ruler of the underworld. The other day when I unleashed the power of Ice Sovereign. Still, it was critical to continue testing it and to eventually make it my own, especially since Ice Sovereign was the ultimate buff skill of the ice element. Focus. I touched something cold that was nestled deep inside my body. It was the trigger to draw out the power of Ice Sovereign that lay dormant inside of me. As a rule of thumb, I raised the power of Ice Sovereign, which had been reduced to 0%, to a rough estimate of about 1%. At the same time. Ugh! An excruciating pain shot through my entire body. It was as if every cell in my body was being stabbed by a needle. Ugh! I immediately suppressed the power of Ice Sovereign to 0%. The pain subsided as if nothing had happened, but before I knew it, I had collapsed on the lawn, groaning. I must have blacked out for a moment. Ugh, I think I'm going to get PTSD. It hurt so much. I still had a long way to go. Right now, I couldn't properly handle Ice Sovereign with my normal body. Perhaps it would be better to try it again properly after I trigger Hunter. After I composed myself, I got up and started training other spells as usual. In the meantime, while I was doing so. What are you practicing? I was startled when someone poked me in the back. I quickly turned around and saw a schoolgirl wearing a witch hat, covering her mouth and suppressing her laughter. Soon after, she started giggling. Naihihi. Oh, what was that reaction? The president is cute. I was feeling a little nauseous, but I gritted my teeth and endured it after seeing her face. What are you doing this late at night? The stars are so beautiful tonight. I was watching them and suddenly thought of you, so I came to see you. You're still training, huh? The sky was embroidered with beautiful stars. The stars appeared in great abundance due to the cloudless sky. I had a feeling. Our president is diligent. Dorothy mischievously opened her half-closed eyes and smiled slyly. I felt uncomfortable for some reason. There was no clear basis for it, but my experience of playing Magic Knight of M.Raken told me that this person didn't come here because she suddenly remembered me. Senior, do you have something to say to me? So, I probed her at once. I couldn't read Dorothy's mind because it was protected by starlight mana, so I had no choice but to find out this way. Dorothy was still smiling. But the silence that followed was no different from affirming my words. Only then did I know the true nature of the sense of my discomfort. Dorothy's always natural, pretentious smile was showing a falseness that shouldn't be there. It meant that her mind was a little disorganized. What makes you think that? Don't underestimate me because you're my favorite. It just seems that way. Dorothy thought about it for a moment. Then, with a wry expression, she looked me straight in the eyes. You're sharp, President. It's only been 2 weeks since we've known each other, yet you know me very well. It's like we've known each other for a long time. It was because I saw you a lot in Magic Knight of M.Raken. Of course, I couldn't really answer that, so I remained silent. I wasn't sure how my emotions were coming across right now, but Dorothy looked doubtful. Can I ask you something? Ask me anything. Will you answer? I'll answer whatever it is. Naihi, okay. Swish. Dorothy suddenly leaned toward me and stuck her head out. I had already gotten used to her act of leaning her face close to mine. I stared at her in silence, not pulling my head back. Soon after, she asked. Why is the president working so hard? What is she talking about? Is there some reason you have to train yourself to death? I'm definitely nearing death with all this training. So, to a person who was gifted with exceptional magic talent such as Dorothy, someone like me might be a rare breed. My goal is to defeat the evil god Nephid, and knowing just how powerful Nephid was in hell difficulty, I simply can't afford to neglect my training. I couldn't rely on the master fainter, Ian Fairytale. Of course, I could confide in a munchkin like Dorothy Hartnova that the evil god Nephid would resurrect in the distant future. It would seem reasonable on the surface. But I can't. Dorothy was cursed to die within the next year. In addition, the curse is accelerated when she comes into contact with a being whose origin comes from demons. For example, the fictional creatures that I fought a few days ago, a miscellaneous mob created by a demon. It was one thing to fight with someone like Thunderbird Galia, who became a demon on the day of the end of semester evaluation. However, if she got into a fight with Vera the Summoner, a demon by birth, she would surely lose her life in no time. Other natural demons were no exception either. If I told you, you'd undoubtedly sacrifice your life to protect the academy. That is not what I want. She would treat her life as expendable, since she was going to die anyways. There is no reason. I lied on purpose. Dorothy should have known right away that I was lying. It's just that it's good to be strong. Dorothy looked at me with a disapproving expression. But she didn't bother to dig into my answer and just laughed. You're no fun, President. A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, but she looked disappointed. It didn't matter. I don't want to put you in danger. I'm going to save you, my favorite, anyways. After that, you'll just have to help me. Soon Dorothy turned her back and began to walk away. Senior, are you leaving? Dorothy just waved her hand without answering. Then, as she disappeared among the trees, I began to hear the sound of grasshoppers. Ah, it feels strange. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. I didn't do anything wrong, but I felt a faint sense of guilt, like the kind you feel when you say or do something wrong. Let's just focus on training. I slapped my cheeks hard with the palms of my hands to drive away any distracting thoughts, then started pouring mana into my hands. In the dorm for the top students of M.Riken Academy, Charles Hall. A certain room was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight shining softly through the window. Dorothy, dressed in her nightgown, was lying on the bed, her head turned to the side. In silence, she stared blankly at the moonlight shining on the floor. She had countless questions for Isaac. Why are you so strong? What is the reason you're training so hard, pretending to be weak and not using your full strength? What is your reason for antagonizing the demons while hiding your identity? He was already strong enough to be considered an arch-wizard, which made it impossible for Dorothy to understand his eccentricity. It didn't even feel like he was honing his basic skills like a great master perfecting the fundamentals. Above all, why do you feel that way? Earlier, Isaac had lied. He didn't reveal the real reason for training to death like that. Why, then, did she see emotions of concern and affection on his lying face? Her emotion detection could never be wrong. Isaac was clearly worried about her. You lied to me, for my sake. What connection could there be between Isaac's lies and his concern for Dorothy? Besides, I'm not someone to be worried about. In the first place, it was ridiculous that he, the most powerful person at M.Riken Academy, would be worried about her. It was comical. Dorothy. What are you doing up so late? A graceful voice rang at Dorothy's bedside. As she turned her head, a white cat with a pink ribbon on her tail reflected in her eyes. It was her 5-star familiar, Ella. You've been tossing and turning ever since we got here. Oh my, are you in love or something? You still haven't digested the firecrackers yet, what are you talking about? Didn't I tell you not to talk about firecrackers? Just thinking about it makes me sick. Dorothy said teasingly as she opened her half-closed eyes. Ella was furious. The day Isaac defeated the demon, Ella ate the firecrackers he had left near Professor Fernando. It was to give Isaac time to escape. If the firecrackers had exploded on time and the Academy's personnel who heard the sound had come running, Isaac would have been caught in the act. The Academy's personnel weren't stupid. I'm worried. Dorothy stroked Ella's soft body, and Ella closed her eyes, enjoying her touch. I wonder if the president knows about my curse. Isaac seemed like an ordinary man on the surface, but he was the strongest person she had ever met, far beyond Dorothy's wildest assumptions. If so, there was a high possibility that he had also figured out the true nature of the curse she possessed. If there was a connection between Isaac's lie and Dorothy's curse, it might be related to the demons. Dorothy had been stroking Ella and thinking for so long that her brain started to overheat. Dorothy. Dorothy. As if her brain had been pushed to the limit and exploded, she started spacing out. Using her brain was her Achilles heel. The dueling evaluation had finally resumed. I thought things must have gone according to the original scenario, except for the appearance of Leafa the elusive. But while having lunch with Amy Holloway, I heard that Luce had knocked Ian out with a single blow. Why? Why on earth? Ian was supposed to reveal that he was a light element user during the duel and leave a lasting impression on the students. This was because of one of the official heroines, Seal Karndas. She had already been involved with Ian during his practical training. She was shocked to see Ian's light magic. Because the promise with the heavenly beings had been passed down through her family. If you find the child of light, please bring him to the heavenly realm. That was the promise Seal's great-great-grandfather made with the heavenly beings when he went to the divine realm. Thus after that, Seal approached Ian and they became involved with one another. As they continued to interact, her fondness for him grew, and later she told Ian how to go to the divine realm, that is, heaven. Ian would need to travel to the heavens to obtain the ultimate light elemental weapon, the luminous sword. Even though Ian was a master feinter, there would come a time when only he could help. Especially later on, when the demon with immunity against all elements other than light appeared, the bad ending would become a foregone conclusion if Ian didn't use, expelled from paradise, with his luminous sword. Whoa, what was that? Am I not mistaken? Did you just use that? Is that light magic? Fortunately, Ian successfully demonstrated the use of his light magic in his duel against the dueling applicant Matteo Giordana, and Seal Karndas was also among the crowd of students watching. Only after seeing her eyes widen in surprise, could I finally breathe a sigh of relief. You must have been scared to death. In Magic Night of M. Raken, when Ian was dueling with Matteo, he was determined not to use light magic. However, after being easily defeated by Luce this time, he seemed to have changed his mind, thinking, if I don't use my light magic first, I won't stand a chance. Of course, I figured out that idea through psychological insight. Anyway, there were no longer any problems with this scenario. Hooray! Now, regardless of the original story, I could focus on the duel. Matteo was defeated by Ian's unexpected use of light magic, but he grasped the hand that he held out to him, creating a heartwarming scene. As expected, no one can touch the strength, greatness, and mana of my being. Tristan Humphrey was in a depressed mood at first, but his bravado and self-esteem were boosted by his easy victories in his duels against other students. Luce Eltania won, winning casually with water magic. Is this all your strength? During the course of the tournament, the groups were switched each time, so I got to see Kaya Astrian's duel as well. Just like Luce, she easily subdued her opponent with wind magic, but she showed her opponent a degree of mercy in giving and receiving attacks. Amy Holloway ran away in terror, but when she was cornered, she squeezed her eyes shut and unleashed a barrage of fire magic at her opponent. Her opponent collapsed, looking like a burnt chicken, leaving Amy looking visibly flustered. Hoo-hoo. I didn't expect someone from Class C to challenge me to a duel. Was this all for the sake of panting like a dog? Ah, how pathetic, how unsightly. But I'll give you credit for having some courage. Great. To a nasty pig like you, I'll give you the honor of being trampled under my feet. Rose Red Rivera laughed with a ho-ho, and began to excitedly stomp on her opponent, a male student, with her foot as he fell to the ground. The faces of the students who were watching were priceless. The expression of the boy who was being trampled on was very happy. He looked like he could die happy right now. Next. Class D Isaac, Class C Donnelly Jenkins, forward. The referee called my name and I stepped up onto the arena. Across from me was a Class C male student with which I had applied for a duel. He straddled the fine line between Class B and Class C, and was a perfect opponent to measure my combat power against. All skills are unrestricted. Surrendering is prohibited for 1 minute. Now, show respect to your opponent and engage in a duel. Kaya's sparkling eyes. Luce's meaningful gaze. Mateo's tense eyes. Amy's supportive eyes. Tristan's inferiority complex flaring. Rose's annoyed glare. Ian's focused eyes, they all turned to me in unison. Ready. Even though I was the weakest, I was able to become stronger by playing an active role in teaching those demons who the person in charge was. I was sure I could compete with the top Class C students now. Begin the duel. With the referee's shout, I conjured, Frostfire, in both hands, Magic Knight of M. Raken. Act 3, Chapter 1. The dueling part was coming to an end. Hey, you worked hard. You worked hard, Enoch. Ha 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 ha. Enoch, your sword skills are as good as ever. It was an eerie night when a party of 4 adventurers, 2 warriors, 1 wizard, and 1 cleric, were on their way back to their inn after a day of dungeon exploration. Today's harvest was quite abundant. From Helcori's claws to Demyrus' wings, and even the gold and silver treasures that the monsters were hoarding in the storerooms. The bags of harvest held by the 2 strong warriors looked very reassuring. Now that the quest received from the guild office was safely completed, it was time to celebrate by throwing a party and drinking to their heart's content. In the midst of all the excitement, the group was walking through the forest when they suddenly came across an open space bathed in moonlight. The group of adventurers felt a presence and stopped in their tracks. Wait. The next words were unnecessary, for their gazes turned to the same place. A woman around 3 meters tall was strolling along the beach. Her tattered dress and ashen skin seemed to ooze with age, but in her open mouth, the number of sharp teeth were too numerous to count. Stop. The woman's feet stopped. In an instant, her head bizarrely twisted toward the group of adventurers. They held their breath at the chilling spectacle. Suddenly, the woman's mouth was stretched open, forming a grotesque smile. Good morning, everyone. Under the dark night sky, the woman greeted them cheerfully. Can you hear the birds chirping? How cute, how cute. Despite the woman's excessive hand gestures and body language, there was no chirping of cute birds. There was only silence. The adventurers group sensed an unusual aura and drew their weapons. Soon, the hoot of an owl rang out. Yes, this sound. Hoot, 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 hoot. The gray-skinned woman swayed her body from side to side like a trumpet. She whispered rapidly, then began to make a duck cry, blood splattering from her mouth. Ah! Cute thing. Do you have any cute ones too? It's cute, it's cute, it's cute. Then, as if the woman's cries were a signal flare, the adventurers' familiars were forcibly summoned. What is this? Zordik. The familiars were engulfed in darkness mana with pained expressions. Soon, countless familiars were summoned around the woman. An army of animal-like and hideous-looking magic beasts were under her command. All of them were magic beasts who had once been someone's familiars, and as they drained the darkness mana, they looked like puppets that had lost their will. Even the adventurers' familiars forgot their masters and flew toward the woman. After being consumed by the darkness mana, the familiars became no different from the rest of the woman's magic beast army. From now on, I am your new owner. Ah, how cute, how cute, how cute, the woman caressed the 4 new familiars, and her eyes took in the branding on their bodies, evidence of their contracted master-servant relationship. The sight made her uncomfortable, so she frowned in annoyance. Alas, there's no use, it's okay, this stepmother will set you free. Soon, the army of familiars closed in and attacked the adventurers. It was a one-sided battle. The 4 adventurers, who seemed to have bright futures ahead of them, fell prey to their familiars and departed from this world. The woman summoned her familiar army back, and in an instant, the army of familiars was engulfed in darkness mana, and their figures disappeared. Smells better. It's cute, smelly. Does the child of light have a cute one? Vera the summoner, a demon with absolute domination over familiars. She walked back to M.Reken Academy, staggering with each step. Footnotes. Chapter 33. Loose, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Loose, 1, the Academy issued a statement to the students after the dueling evaluation was over. They were currently in the process of investigating the cause of the frequent appearance of demons, and would prepare the best safety measures to ensure that no students were harmed. The curriculum proceeded as normal, as if nothing had happened. Some students protested that the Academy was hiding something and demanded the truth, but they were in the minority. Of course, it's not a logical situation. An existence that threatens people's lives had appeared several times, yet the Academy was going back to its normal operation even though a student or professor almost died. Even if demons were regarded as natural disasters, it didn't make sense. However, in reality, the board of directors, the principal, and the academic staff were working day and night to get the situation under control. Unless they had been living under a rock, there was no student who didn't know that fact. However, by the end of the first semester of Year 1, the Thunderbird subjugation, the matter would escalate and would become too big, forcing the Imperial Knights to intervene. And this served as an opportunity to bring together the so-called Golden Generation, which included a relatively insignificant princess, a saintess who handled divine power, physical, and a sociopathic priestess from the east. The princess had planned to enter the school from the beginning. The saintess came because of a sense of justice to face the darkness of this world. No, it was because of her love for winning. And then there was the priestess, who had a plan of her own. I wasn't certain, but it appeared that those with special status or birth tended to have a peculiar way of thinking. If I survived, they, the Golden Generation, would become my juniors. But that's for later. What mattered now was that the original story had been greatly twisted. During the dueling evaluation, the final boss of Act 6, Scene 3, Lifa the Elusive, appeared, and because of his loose lips, he had leaked some crucial information to Professor Fernando. The very existence of a mole. How did I, a commoner, know about this, you ask? Of course, I found out thanks to observing the main academy staff through psychological insight, and it detailed worried about the future because the demons have a mole at the academy. In that case, I should prepare for an scenario when the truth that Alice is the mastermind becomes revealed sooner than in the original scenario. For reference, even Dorothy's, all in the world, couldn't discover that Alice was the person controlling everything from behind the scenes. It was because Alice had a unique trait called the Red Queen's Paradox. To conclude, no one could read Alice's psychology or essence. Anyway, I have to prepare for a situation where Alice's identity is revealed sooner than expected. Rock collapse, rock element, 4, Kung. Ugh. Aya. It hurts. I thought I told you to keep it within moderation, nothing higher than 3 stars. The yellow glowing boulders slammed into my body, crashing into each other, causing an explosion of mana. The impact sent my body tumbling across the grass before slamming into a tree. Phew, that was a surprise. I groaned and managed to raise my upper body. The being that had knocked me off my feet was a small golem, tilting its head. Its body was made of solid stone that looked incredibly hard. It was my 3-star rock element familiar, Eden. Q. Don't pretend to be cute while tilting your head. It doesn't suit you. Eden, LV. Race. Magic beast elements. Rock danger. Psychology. Wants to look cute to you. Q. 2 days ago, I had the opportunity to summon a familiar during Magic Night of M. Reken. Act 3, Chapter 2, Familiar. The students took turns summoning familiars using the summoning circle. I was worried that there would be unexpected variables like there were in the dueling evaluation, but fortunately, it ended safely, without any incident. One could summon up to 4-star familiars with the familiar summoning circle. From 5-stars and above, you had to meet in person and sign a contract. A 3-star like Eden exceeded my expectations, so I excitedly signed a contract with him. The main character, Ian Fairytale, summoned a fire element familiar named Rex, as per the original story. A whopping 4-stars. He resembled a newborn Tyrannosaurus, and according to the original plot of the familiar part, Ian and Rex would soon have a confrontation to clarify their master-servant relationship. As a result, Rex would become the partner of the Master Fainter protagonist, and this time, he would win because the demons weren't his opponent. Well, that's that. I should focus on my familiar. I stood up from my seat, rubbing my battered stomach. I could endure this kind of pain 3 or 4 more times, well, not really. It seemed that the penalty for disobeying orders, pain, had not come to Eden. Disobedience was judged by the familiar's perception. They must be aware of the fact that they were not following their master's orders. Eden seemed to think that he followed my orders well. In other words, it was also proof that his intelligence was so low that he didn't even realize that the spell he had just cast was a 4-star spell. Well, this was something that could be explained and taught. Well, it certainly hurt less than I thought it would. I was testing the elemental bracelet, an unexpected item I obtained by defeating Leafa the Elusive, with Eden. The elemental bracelet increased my resistance to a specific element by 40. Elemental magic of a certain level would no longer be able to harm me. This effect lasted 24 hours, once 24 hours have passed after the bracelet effect was activated, the increased elemental resistance would return to its original state. Then I could use the effect once more. Presently, I had set my elemental resistance to the rock element. To modify the setting, all I had to do was simply adjust the ring attached to the bracelet to the pattern of the desired element engraved on the bracelet. As it turned out, the effect was more amazing than I had expected. It didn't hurt unless I was hit by high-star spells, and I was much less likely to be pushed away. Even if I got hit with 4-star magic, it just hurt and that was it. Oh, who am I kidding? It hurt like hell, but I would have passed out without the elemental bracelet. What if I was wearing the elemental bracelet during the dueling evaluation? When Tristan Humphrey unleashed his whirlwind, I could have given him a proper blow without being blown away. Eden. 3-stars. Remember, 3-stars. What you just cast was a 4-star, so don't use it anymore. Okay. Eden replied, raising his right arm in the air. His voice was more on the neutral side. Pretending to be cute didn't suit him, but was it because he was my familiar? My heart seemed to be filling up with affection. Rock burial, rock element, 4. Ugh. Q. This blockhead. If you had to choose the tallest building on the M.Rken Academy site, it was definitely the Hegel Magic Tower. However, since it only had occupancy rights on the Academy site, it was safe to say that it was a kind of private company that had nothing to do with the Academy. The Hegel Magic Tower was home to many wizards from M.Rken Academy. This was because, in exchange for occupying part of the Academy site, additional points were given to M.Rken Academy graduates who took the entry test. The tower itself was so prestigious that it was often mentioned as a possible career path for M.Rken Academy students. The entire top floor was used exclusively as a research laboratory for a single wizard. It was a place only those who opened their heart to her were allowed to enter. Professor Fernando Frost stepped inside. It was a large circular room, many books were floating in the air, and the walls were lined with them. Traces of alchemy were everywhere, and the high ceiling was made of glass, allowing a clear view of the sky. In the center of the lab, a female wizard with auburn hair sprawled comfortably on the floor. With a small stature and physique, she read her book calmly while waving her legs. Aria Lilias, Fernando's teacher and the tower master of Hegel Magic Tower. She raised her head and glanced at Fernando with an impassive face, then turned her gaze back to the book she was reading. I came to say hello, master. What happened? I wanted to ask you something. You did not even ask how I am doing first. As expected of my disciple, losing your manners. Aria Lilias had a habit of speaking in simple sentences. Your question. Have you heard the latest news from the academy? About the demons and black monster. Repeat that nonsense. On the first day of the dueling evaluation, I almost lost my life to a demon. The news of her disciple's near-death experience caught Aria's attention. It was a fact she knew, of course. Since Hegel Magic Tower was located near M.Riken Academy, she couldn't help but hear news about the academy. But the black monster protected me, and was even able to use even 9-star magic without difficulty. It is presumed that monster has already reached the realm of an archwizard. So, how do you perceive this? The identity of someone who suddenly appears one day and vanishes immediately after. A black monster. It first appeared during the first-year class placement evaluation of the magic department, and defeated a demon that appeared out of nowhere. During this dueling evaluation, that monster protected Professor Fernando by overpowering the powerful demon that had created another world. What does the academy think? They see that monster as a demon who rebelled against the other demons. What do you think? I assume you have already guessed it, but that monster is probably one of your students. It was something Fernando had already thought of, so he didn't question it. One thing is clear, that monster was trying to protect you. Fernando's figure was reflected in Aria's profound gaze. My advice is, do not interfere. Do not pry into the secrets of someone who is trying to protect you for no reason. Just analyze and solve the cause of the demon's appearance. May I ask why? Hey! In the blink of an eye, Aria's face was right in front of Fernando's. She had levitated her body with telekinesis magic. From a distance so close that their faces were almost touching, with an emotionless face, she spoke in a sarcastic tone. You still don't understand. That monster came after observing an anomaly of this academy that even I had not noticed. It came to protect the people at this academy. You can't help, so don't do anything stupid. He knew that the black monster was on the academy's side and was trying to protect people. Fernando testified before the Truth Investigation Committee that the monster was not an enemy, but after numerous discussions, the conclusion was reached that the black monster is likely to be a demon that rebelled against the demons. How else could he have known when and where the demons would appear? Most of the faculty were afraid of the monster. But Fernando was different, he wanted to be on the monster's side, just as the student had been on his. Of course, master. Fernando answered in a calm voice. Darkness began to tinge the sky. Lou Celtania, the first-year head of the magic department, went to the training ground for the first time in a while to practice lightning magic and was on her way back to her dormitory. With all of the students' attention focused on her, she felt overwhelmed and left after half an hour. Even when she left, the students exclaimed, as expected of the top student. Does that mean she only needs to practice that much? Which made her feel even more overwhelmed. Oh, really? That's hilarious. He. Suddenly, Luce's eyes caught sight of the girls passing by on the street. They were walking side by side, chatting happily. Later, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. As the road diverged, the female students waved goodbye and parted ways. It was an ordinary sight. Eating together, chatting together, and at the end of the day, looking forward to the next time they saw each other. It was just an ordinary daily life for the other students, who she always saw and never paid any attention to. But for some reason, today, the sight of them stirred something in Luce's heart. Suddenly, the image of a man came to her mind. Luce's footsteps began to take a different course, and instead of going straight to the dormitory, she took a roundabout path. The place she arrived at was near the corner of the butterfly garden. Just passing through, even if she took this path, she could still reach the dormitory, so it was the right way back. It's just that it would take 5 times longer than her normal route. The road at the end of Butterfly Garden was usually deserted. Only the sound of bugs echoed loudly. There it is. Luce's gaze darted in all directions, scanning left and right, until she spotted Isaac in the corner of the garden. It was indeed a coincidence. On the first day of the dueling evaluation, Isaac had succumbed to the magic of Tristan Humphrey. Everyone present must have felt the stark difference in magic power between the two. How disappointed Isaac must have been when he felt that insurmountable wall. On the contrary, he pretended to be unaffected by it, and the memory of him, who looked more pitiful, came to mind again. However, frustration did not deter him. During his subsequent duels, he showed a burning desire. I was happy. Seeing this, Luce felt a sense of satisfaction. As she reflected on the dueling evaluation in her head, she suddenly remembered the incident of the demon's appearance. Grung had appeared again. It was said that he protected Professor Fernando and then disappeared again. If she had focused her mana perception, she might have noticed him appearing. It was a pity she didn't. Every time she thought of the monster, she felt a subtle emotion she had never felt before. It was not an uncomfortable feeling, but more of a favorable one. Recently, Luce realized the true nature of said emotion. This feeling was the feeling of wanting to get to know someone. For this reason, she spent a considerable amount of time pondering the concept of friendship through books. But the more she did, the more difficult it was for her to understand what a friend was. How do people understand and accept this ambiguous concept as if it were so natural? It was really strange. And recently, there was one more person she wanted to be friends with. The wavy, silver-blue-haired male student who came into view was that person, but what is he doing? Luce was taken aback. For whatever reason, Isaac was getting beat up by the magic of his own familiar. Isaac's condition looked awful. His eyes were forced open, his breathing was ragged. His condition looked precarious, as if he would collapse at any moment. Suddenly, water mana began to gather next to Luce. The mana took the form of a small killer whale, and with a light coating of water mana on its body, it began to swim through the air like an ocean, shouting, "Emergency! Emergency! A familiar is beating its master." It sounded as if a little boy were shouting in an innocent voice. The little killer whale magic beast, Bello. It was a 4-star familiar who responded to Luce's call during the familiar summoning. Bello emergency dispatch. No violence. No violence. Go back. Ha! Luce was trying to unsummon Bello, who was about to fly toward Isaac, while saying, "Go back." Suddenly, Isaac's eyes rolled back, and his body slumped to the side. Thud. He fell onto the grass and lost consciousness. Luce's heart sank. She didn't bother to recall Bello, but instead hurriedly ran towards the unconscious Isaac. Incident occurred. Incident occurred. Arrested for beating your master, dude. K.Q. Passing through the noisy familiar, Lucy held the unconscious Isaac's upper body in her arms. Sometimes I dream about my 3.pyong studio in Silim.dong. The already tiny room was half filled with thick books. I spread 3 open books on my desk, trapping myself in a narrow world. I looked like an ordinary civil service examinee. I felt as if I were walking through a tunnel that was pitch black and had no end in sight. I wondered if I could reach the end of this tunnel. Sometimes, when I felt like my heart was about to collapse at that thought, I would mercilessly slap my thighs. Otherwise, my narrow world would shrink and my existence itself would cease to exist. The pain was a means of maintaining my sanity. But why am I reminiscing about that time? I remembered. I kept receiving Eden spells to experiment with the elemental bracelet in various ways. The pain reminded me of my examination life. It seems the damage must have accumulated and the fatigue that had been building up must have caused me to pass out. So, am I just lying there in the corner of the garden? No, my body is warm and cozy. I'm pretty sure this sensation is a bed. My eyes fluttered open. What kind of bed is this? Then, my eyes caught the sight of a familiar yet unfamiliar ceiling. I wasn't talking about déjà vu. It was a familiar ceiling in Magic Night of M.Raken, but it was an unfamiliar ceiling to me as Isaac. What? I raised my upper body. Even at a glance, this was a luxurious room. Even the bed I was lying on was unnecessarily large. It was the size that usually comes to mind when imagining the bed of rich people. I looked around. No matter how I looked at it, this place, it looked like the interior of Charles Hall, the dormitory for top-tier students that I saw in Magic Night of M.Raken. In addition, looking at the dressing table and interior, it seemed to be a woman's room. Wait a second. A woman's room. All dormitories were divided into male and female dormitories. Of course, it was strictly forbidden to enter the dormitory of the opposite sex. Why am I in such a forbidden area? Soon, the damp towel that was stuck to my forehead fell off. It was a neatly folded towel. Was I being taken care of? My mind raced. Who brought me to Charles Hall? Kaya. Was it Kaya? It was then. The victim woke up. The victim woke up. A small killer whale flew in front of me, swimming through the air as if it were the sea. Now that I think about it, I think I might have heard this familiar's voice right before I passed out. And I knew who the owner of this familiar was because I had played Magic Night of M.Raken. Until I got tired of it. Are you awake? It was a soft yet soothing voice, like the moonlight, it seemed to seduce my ears. When I turned my eyes to the head of the bed, my eyes caught the sight of a girl with rose gold hair sitting somewhere. One of the official heroines with a graceful beauty, with morpho butterfly-colored hair ties adorning either side of her head. She was scanning me with eyes that seemed to contain the blue ocean. It was Luce Eltania, the top seat of the first year's magic department at M.Raken Academy. Chapter 34. Luce, 2, you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Luce, 2, Bello, go back. As I watched Luce unsummon the killer whale familiar, Bello, I organized the situation in my head. While I was experimenting with the elemental bracelet, I passed out and collapsed. Even though my body was exhausted, suddenly losing consciousness was unexpected. I fainted and was seemingly saved by Luce, who happened to be passing by. Luce. On the surface, there was nothing unusual about this sort of situation. However, the problem was that it involved Luce. Unless you took the Luce route, she would display her true nature as an outsider by living the entire first semester her way, without caring about anyone else. She wasn't the kind of character to get upset when she sees a person like me lying on the ground. It would have been much more in character for her to just say, he must have fallen asleep. She was the kind of character who left people alone, dead or alive. This made me feel uncomfortable. I opened Luce's status window. Luce Eltania, LV. 115 race. Human elements. Water, lightning danger. Psychology. Relieved that you seem to be okay. Her level was 5 higher than when I first saw her, but that wasn't important right now. Her psychology was strange. Why are you worried about me? Even if she had saved me because of her mood today, why would she feel relieved? That couldn't be the case. As Isaac, the only interaction I had with Luce was when I gave a passionate performance worthy of winning the Best Actor of the Year award during the class placement evaluation. Then the conclusion is. Could it be that I was caught? My face became pensive at the thought. What's your name? Grung. Grung, I recalled the events of the class placement evaluation. Had Luce realized that I was Grung, the one who saved her? If so, the pieces would fit together like a puzzle. I touched my forehead with my right hand. Oh my God. Does your head hurt? What happened? I was just passing by and accidentally saw you pass out, so I used magic to bring you with me. Luce emphasized the word accidentally, her tone as gentle as the moonlight. Ah, now I'm stumped. How did she realize? The reason I brought a magic cloak of disguise during the class placement evaluation was because of Luce's perceptive eye. If she had realized my identity, she would have reported it to the Academy's administration. There was also another reason. It was to cover up the fact that Isaac saved Luce. In Magic Knight of M. Raken, one of the conditions to win Luce's favor was to protect or save her during the class placement evaluation. And if that happened, the player had one more thing to worry about. Because even Luce's likability is a bad ending factor. Luce was the type of person who, once she opens her heart to someone, opens it fully. Maybe that was why the speed at which her likability increased was speeding up like a runway train. Even without doing anything special, the likability meter would rise. If the player didn't regulate her likability by behaving appropriately, the likability meter would eventually burst. Then, the player would face extra bad end endpoint 13. An extra bad end referred to a bad ending that had nothing to do with the main storyline. It was similar to getting killed in a car accident while walking down the street. Among them, endpoint 13 Bird Cage. The main character, Ian Fairytale, was kidnapped and imprisoned by Luce, who had become his psychotic lover. It was an ending where he helplessly met his end in her loving care. Therefore, Luce's likability was one of the factors I needed to be wary of. Is this your room? Yes. Anyway, there was really no other way to explain this other than that my identity was revealed. All the bruises on my body were healed. When I pointed out the wounds on my body, Luce explained. I've healed most of them myself. I know how to use healing magic too. I think you've been pushing yourself too hard. Lie down some more, I'll wet a towel and give it to you. Don't be so nice. You are not that kind of character. Water generation, water element, 1, I pondered while Luce picked up the towel off my leg and soaked it with water magic. I hadn't realized there would be such a variable. How and when did she find out? I'm ready. Lie down some more. The bad end variable with rose-gold hair was wringing the wet towel into a bowl placed next to me, then folded it neatly and approached me. Startled, I reached out and stopped her. Wait, hold on. Luce looked at me with a puzzled expression. I'm grateful that you saved me, but why did you bring me to your room? Then where should I have taken you? There was the Academy Hospital. And the infirmary was also close. I didn't think of it. I've never been to those places before. It seemed that a hospital room as an option was hard for Luce to imagine, since she had a strong body in high mana. How did you manage to get here without being noticed? I didn't run into anyone on my way here. Why, is there a problem? Perhaps it was just good timing. No, nothing, I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I just took the towel. It was cold. I touched my forehead and felt a definite fever. I placed the cold towel on my warm forehead like a hand warmer. Lie down. I'll bring you some warm soup. As Luce slid off the bed, I weighed my options and decided to ask her, do you know me? Why are you taking such good care of me? Luce's shoulders shook as she stopped dead in her tracks. Luce Eltania, Psychology. At a loss for words and doesn't know what to say to you. Ah, never mind about that. I'm just curious what kind of feelings Luce has towards me. I do not know either. Luce's cheeks flushed and left a meaningful remark. Crazy. An inexperienced response. It was a reaction that would only appear in a youth romance story. Isaac. Luce turned around to look at me. She even called my first name. I had never even told her my name before. Luce hesitated, trying to figure out what to say, with flushed cheeks. To be honest, I've known you for a long time, this is not good. Not that introduction, stop. This uneasy air. The romantic atmosphere. And a mood where a confession without context wouldn't be out of place. From the moment Luce confessed her feelings, she would quickly become obsessed. It was a case where the fact that she confessed would make her feelings grow stronger. But, it was too soon. Could it be that my face was more to Luce's liking than Ian's? Is that why the likability was increasing much faster than in the original game? I saw you the other day by chance, and I've been watching you ever since. And I've been wondering, why do you train so hard? Luce spoke in a calm voice, barely above a whisper. I'm sure she must be curious. When I was grung, I displayed immense power. It was incongruous to see a guy like that practice magic to death that Luce found so questionable. The other students train hard, too. They don't push themselves to the point of nosebleeds every day like you do. She saw, every day. So, I've been watching you and thinking a lot. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is. Oh, what is that? A very unnatural change of topic. I couldn't help it. I wasn't ready to hear her utter those words. My head was still hurting because of the early appearance of Act 6, Chapter 3 final boss. The last thing I needed was one more bad end variable to worry about. Ah, that. Luce was kind enough to explain the names and uses of the objects I pointed at. Each time, I would point to a seemingly mundane object and exclaim, wow, that's amazing. What's that, and ask questions. What's this? It's luxurious. Chessboard. I got it as a present once. What's this? It has a nice design. It's my family's ceremonial knife. It was in my luggage when I came to the academy, so I left it here for now. What's this? It's beautiful. It's a grimoire I received from someone special to me. It's made of human skin. What's this? It's cute. It's a cursed doll used in black magic. I've heard that if you put a human's hair in here and poke it with a needle, that person will feel pain. It's probably superstition, but do you want to try it? Before I knew it, Luce was leading me around the room, pointing out and explaining to me all sorts of mundane objects. Oh, there are a lot of books here. You can't touch those. As I spoke while looking at the bookshelf, Luce's voice, which had been as soft as the moonlight, turned cold. For a moment, I felt a murderous aura. I quickly turned my head away from the bookshelf. Yes, of course it was because I was scared. The bookshelf was lined with things she was too embarrassed to show me. Nothing special, just books with titles such as, How to Make Friends, What is Friendship, and How to Open Up to Others. You really made up your mind to open up your heart. But are you okay with walking around? I'm fine, thanks to you. I had been looking around the room with the towel on my forehead from earlier. My head felt light-headed, but it wasn't serious enough to be noticeable. This. Again, I almost reflexively asked, what is this? What caught my eye was a small cylindrical box. It sat on her desk while it bathed in the light from the luminescent lamp, showing off the color of black pearls. Luce stood next to me and narrowed her eyes. As if to say, don't ask me what it is. There was a moment of silence, and I was about to pretend I didn't see it. Isaac. Luce spoke to me in a soft, yet almost seductive voice, as if drawing me in. Do you think the witches of calamity are all bad? Why set the mood by asking something like that out of nowhere? Why is that? Just. I suddenly felt like asking. Luce stared at the small, black cylindrical box, and then subtly lowered her head. Witch of calamity. That was how history referred to the vilest of witches, those who possessed natural magic talent and committed inhumane crimes against humanity. They've done unspeakable acts of cruelty, so it was only natural for anyone to consider them as bad existences. But it didn't take me long to realize why Luce was asking the question. Inside that black box were Luce's eyeballs. A witch of calamity had plucked out Luce's eyes, preserved it, and handed it to her. Luce kept the box on her desk because she wanted to remember the witch at every moment. Luce's current eyes were implanted by the witch of calamity, and that seemingly cruel act was done to protect Luce's life. Which, incidentally, explains why her eyesight was beyond that of humans. No. I shook my head and replied indifferently. Because I had seen all the stories in Magic Knight of M.Rken. I knew what kind of person the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath was like. She was the Witch of Calamity that Luce missed so much. Contrary to her unfair notoriety as the Witch of Calamity who lured many children into a candy store and brutally murdered them, she was someone who had sacrificed everything for the sake of children. Although I knew I shouldn't attempt to use my knowledge as an advantage to increase Luce's likability, I didn't want to deny the person she missed so much. I don't think they're necessarily all bad. Luce shook her head in disbelief. But it could be a story made up by people. I haven't actually seen a Witch of Calamity myself. How can I be sure? Luce stared in my direction, wide-eyed, obviously surprised by my answer. I deliberately pretended not to see, and looked at other objects. Yeah, you're right. Luce's voice was a little teary, and a deep sense of loss could be felt. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath was a very dear person to Luce along with her biological brother. However, the witch was falsely accused of sacrificing many children to a mythological magic beast and had been sacrificed in front of Luce. The people and the country have placed the blame on the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath for all their sins. Luce fell apart that day. She closed her heart towards people. The world that she had tried to see as beautiful, even after being abandoned by her biological parents, was so cruelly exposed to the 10-year-old girl. There was an air of awkwardness. Did I make things weird? No, what should I do about her sniffles? How do I react to her forcing back tears? Ah, I suddenly have a headache, I can't help it. I'll just pretend to be in pain. It actually hurts, but I have to act like it hurts even more. I swayed gracefully, yet naturally, and moved towards the bed. It was a brilliant gesture, even in my own opinion. As I sat on the bed, I tilted my head back and pressed the towel against my forehead. Are you okay? My head feels dizzy. I guess I must have overexerted myself. Lie down. Oh, I'll bring you some warm soup. I was not hungry, but I nodded because I wanted to buy myself some time to think. Luce looked at me with a look of concern for a moment before going into the kitchen. Suddenly, she poked her head around the corner and glared at me. Isaac. Ha. I want to be friends with you. Ha. What? Upon hearing the words that contained a slight hint of amusement, I looked straight ahead again. Luce was staring at me, a pure smile drawn across her face. Soon, as if embarrassed, she blushed and scratched her cheek while avoiding my eyes. Friends. It was bewildering. In Magic Knight of M.Rken, there was no option to be friends with Luce. Her likability just meant romantic love from beginning to end. Ever since I saw you training so hard, I thought I wanted to be friends with you. Come to think of it, didn't she say she'd been watching me train every day? That doesn't necessarily mean she realized that I was grung, does it? There was no mention of me being grung either. Yes, it was a separate issue. Luce simply happened to stumble upon me, was impressed by the way I trained while nosebleeding, and began to feel friendly toward me. I was not sure what kind of psychological change led to this, but it was just a matter of accepting her words at face value. In the first place, I should have suspected something when I saw a plethora of books on Luce's bookshelf titled Friendship. Therefore, She doesn't know that I'm grung, did she just want to be friends with me? I felt like I had been hit hard in the back of the head. It was a feeling similar to betrayal. I had gone through all sorts of thoughts and emotions alone. I felt embarrassed. I couldn't let my guard down just yet, but being friends was not so bad. It'll be fine. In the beginning, I was reluctant to be friends with someone like Kaya Astrian. But after I became friends with Amy Holloway and Mateo's gang, I thought about it and realized that it was okay to have a somewhat limited approach to friendships. I stand out when I meet Kaya, so we would meet in inconspicuous places, although I rarely run into her these days. Anyway, I was open to welcoming such a relationship. I set the towel I'd been holding to my forehead aside, climbed out of bed, and approached Luce. My second favorite character in Magic Knight of M. Raken, Luce Eltania. I flashed her a bright smile and held out my right hand. Of course. Luce's eyes started to sparkle with life, and her rose-gold hair began to rise slightly, as if electrostatically. She tried to maintain her cool, keeping the corners of her mouth from rising. She took my outstretched hand. To be friends. It wasn't a big deal to me, it's just something I have to accept when asked to be friends. But it must have been very difficult for someone like Luce. She spent so many years of her life building walls between herself and others, she may have had vague fears about what it meant to have a friend. She probably tried to understand the concept of friendship by reading countless books on the subject, and even in her recent words, there were likely a lot of worries and concerns. In the game Magic Knight of M. Raken, whenever I spoke to the NPCs wandering around, Luce's dialogue was always. She always went around alone, ate alone, and studied alone. She spent the first semester of her freshman year alone like that. However, there were moments when she, too, laughed with others. No matter how skeptical she was of humanity, and no matter how hurt she was, her true feelings were different from her outward behavior. The crackling sound of the fireplace lasted for a long time, like a lingering afterglow. After what seemed like an eternity, I broke the silence. But you stand out too much, and that's a little overwhelming for me. So just because we're friends doesn't mean we can hang out all the time, you know. Well, Luce's voice trembled slightly. She couldn't even make eye contact with me. Was that the right answer? Did she even hear what I just said? Well, she must have heard me. Anyway, I should probably go now. Luce didn't realize that I was grung. Now that I knew that, I had no reason to stay here any longer. Even if it hurts, I would just have to toughen up. Even if I said I was going to rest, I couldn't stay in the girls' dormitory forever. Oh, it would be nice if you had some soup before you go, it's okay. I appreciate the thought. Oh, do you have a cloak or something by any chance? A cloak? Yeah, I have one, why? Luce gave me a black cloak, and I draped it over my head and body like a hijab. Eden. Kyu. Kuang. Light brown manna gathered right beside me, and took the form of a small golem familiar, Eden. It landed on the floor while cheering with a cute cry. Luce, I have to go. Ah, yes, Eden and I approached the window, and as we got closer, the scenery 4 stories high appeared in front of my eyes. It was terrifying, but I had no choice but to escape this way. Eden, create some rocks to land on. Make them in a stair-like formation. Okay. Ice generation, ice element, 1, rock generation, rock element, 1, Sherorak DDDDDDD. I created a crude ice ladder leading from the window to the ground beneath it. Eden's boulders surged up, creating a makeshift staircase. Luce, see you tomorrow. I waved at Luce before climbing over the edge of the window. Suddenly, Luce's eyes widened. Did I greet her in a weird way? Well, I must have looked weird wearing the cloak like a hijab. Eden immediately jumped out of the window, and I started descending the ladder. Kya. It's a man. Pervert. A pervert is here. Damn, my worst fears were realized. I unsummoned Eden and hurriedly ran away from Charles Hall. Luce stood still for a long time after Isaac left. The window was open and the cool night breeze gently rustled the curtains. Tomorrow, Isaac's greetings drifted through Luce's mind like a lingering memory. It was a greeting exchanged between people with a close relationship who looked forward to their next meeting. Kaya. Catch the pervert. Stop there, stalker. Roaring. Quagwagwang. Luce's lips quirked into a smile. She couldn't even hear the sound of the riot outside the window, she felt a thrill that felt as if her body was floating in the sky. Yeah, see you tomorrow. The voice that expressed her innermost thoughts drifted away in the night breeze. Beyond the window, the shining moonlight seemed exceptionally bright tonight. Chapter 35. Luce, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Luce, 3, it was a very refreshing morning. I hadn't slept this well since the day I defeated Garcia the Hermit. My fever quickly subsided. It seemed that the influence of Luce's healing magic was great. My body felt light, so I left Doris Hall, the dorm for inferior students, while I suppressed the urge to run. Even though the interior facilities of Doris Hall were inferior and outdated compared to the other dormitories, the surrounding garden with lush greenery and Corinthian pillars combined with the design to create a beautiful atmosphere. I headed for the dorm gate with light steps. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of the male students leaving the dorm gates. They all had strange looks on their faces. They were Doris Hall male students who, like me, were leaving to attend the academy. They were passing by the corner outside the entrance, sneaking glances and side-eyeing. What could everyone be blushing about? It's understandable if it's Dorothy Hartnova. Thinking that as a joke, I walked out the door. I glanced in the direction of the male students' gazes. Then, for a moment, my eyes were dazzled, like the halo effect that occurs when you see a handsome or pretty celebrity. It was that kind of feeling. A female student was standing there with her bag in both her hands. Her long, straight, rose-gold hair was adorned with morpho butterfly-colored braids on either side of her head, a typical example of a noble lady. The bright sunlight beating down on her made her beauty stand out even more. The moment her blue, oceanic eyes turned to me, I swallowed my breath. Hello, Isaac. It was her. Luce Eltania. She greeted me with a bright smile and waved her right hand at me. The gazes of the male students passing by turned to me this time. I'm fucked. The weather is nice today, isn't it? I stared at Luce in disbelief as she blurted out a cliché comment that sounded like it had been rehearsed many times before. I should have been more cautious in this situation, but I suddenly ended up casting an AOE aggro and was caught off guard. What's wrong with your expression? Is the weather bad? This girl. The weather in my heart is what's bad. It was obvious why I didn't want the students to see me with Kaya. I was still a Class D commoner. If Kaya, a Class A noble from the ducal house of Astrian, was seen eating or hanging out with someone like me, it would naturally draw the attention of other students. This would be very suitable as a topic of conversation among first-year students. And such rumors carried the risk of reaching Alice Carroll's ears. There was no need to consider the case of Alice simply passing by and overhearing something. She was too busy as the student council president, so she didn't go to the student cafeteria, and instead relaxed by getting drunk by herself. What I had to be most wary of was Alice's subordinate, who was among my classmates. That person was a prospective member of the student council recruited by Alice, and reported all the trends of the first-year students they had learned to Alice. It was not just the student council. In addition to the student council, M.Riken Academy also had a student faction called the Four Constellations. If we were to compare it to the Korean political system, members of the Four Constellations who became part of the student council could be seen as the ruling party, while the remaining members of the Four Constellations would become part of the opposing party or other political parties. Of course, the details were different. There were also first-year prospective members who had already been recruited into the 4 constellations in advance. These first-year students gathered information and relayed it to their own factions. They were spies of sorts. This was done for 2 reasons. First, to gather information about the students they wanted to recruit into their own faction. Second, to identify potential candidates who could be useful for other factions. Their ultimate goal was to produce a student council president from within their own faction, and if they succeeded, they would be able to wield enormous power within the academy. Alice would probably use this as justification to find the troublemaker and stop him. Perhaps the fact that I used 5-star magic during the dueling evaluation has reached her ears already. However, because there were other students who were more impressive, that information was most likely buried. But, well. Let's eat together, Isaac. It was while eating lunch in the student cafeteria of the magic department. Suddenly, Luce came up to me and put down her tray, and sat down in the seat across from me. The gazes of the students around me stung. They all looked surprised. Some looked so flustered that orange juice was dripping from their mouths. Luce Eltania is eating with Isaac. No way, this is the first time I've seen the top seat smile. Me too, what kind of pairing is this? Of course, the occasional meal with Amy or Mateo's gang never received such attention. However, Luce was the first-year head of the magic department at the prestigious M.Riken Academy. She was the object of envy for many students. Moreover, she was famous for always being cold and indifferent. Her dramatic mood reversal, where she only showed her bright side to me, was bound to be noticed by the students. It feels like having a meal with a celebrity. I wondered if this was the right time to use the phrase, I can't tell if my food is going through my mouth or nose, but that was exactly how I felt right now. How was class? Luce smiled as she made another cliché comment. I remembered something I have to do. I'll go first. Ah. I hurriedly got up with my tray and ran away quickly. Luce reached out her arm towards me, as if telling me not to go, but I couldn't bring myself to give in. Orphan Hall, Class D classroom. The students' eyes were all drawn to me. The same went for Ian, who had a band-aid on his cheek after fighting his familiar, Rex, yesterday. No wonder, because right next to me sat the top seat with rose-gold hair staring at me. She rested her arms on the desk and leaned her cheeks against it, while the original owner of the seat was standing in the back, unable to speak and fidgeting. Luce, the class is about to start. Shouldn't you go back? I'll go when class starts. This was the Class D classroom. Meanwhile, Luce belonged to Class A, where only the top 5 students could enter, and she was even the top student among them. Just her presence in this classroom made the air feel incredibly heavy. What's the relationship between the top seat and Isaac? Isn't there that feeling? Wanting to be close to the person you like, the top seat. Is that even a question? I could hear the whispers of the students. Seriously, it's really making me feel restless. A choice I had made while I was relieved that she hadn't recognized me as Grung had led to such devastating consequences. Luce, I told you not to do this because you stand out a lot, but I want to stay close to you, I spoke in a quiet voice, but the students with good ears seemed to understand what I was saying, and their eyes widened. Did you hear that? Isaac is pressing the top seat to leave. Rather, the top seat is the one begging. Are you kidding me? I was at a loss for words here. Just then, Professor Fernando Frost walked into the classroom. Let's start class now, Professor Fernando, who was standing in front of the podium, was about to speak but hesitated when he saw me and Luce. You are Class A's Luce Eltania. What are you doing here? Go. Luce's eyes snapped toward Professor Fernando. It was a cold glare, like a murderous threat. And for a brief moment, all of the students in the room could feel a strong flow of mana. I didn't need psychological insight to know that they were all scared. It gave me chills and made my whole body trembled. Luz had a habit of taking a defensive posture like this when others spoke to her. Even if the other person was a professor. Professor Fernando, who was in charge of grading the magic department's first-year performance evaluations and exams, had to be familiar with Luz's personality. Maybe that's why he only slightly narrowed his eyes and didn't react. "I'm leaving. See you later, Isaac. That's why you have no friends, you idiot." Of course, I didn't say that and just waved my hand and sent her off. Because I was scared. The owner of the seat where Luz had sat had finally got his seat back and let out a sigh of relief. He looked like he was going to argue with me, but then he went as quiet as a dead mouse. He must have realized that touching me would mean touching Luz. Afterwards, Professor Fernando cleared his throat with a and began to speak in earnest. "Before we start the lecture, I'd like to announce the next performance evaluation. It was the last performance evaluation before the end of the semester. We are going to evaluate your magic craft skills. As I had mentioned in our last lecture, magic crafting boasts a very high efficiency as a way to train mana control. The act of using mana to create crafting items was known as magic crafting. Although it was referred to as craftsmanship, it was more of an art that sought fleeting beauty, rather than practical utility as a commodity. The level of difficulty varied greatly depending on the design, and it was primarily used in places such as performances. In addition, mana efficiency and control were greatly involved in shaping elemental mana into its desired form. Together, these two abilities were known as mana mastery. By the way, the higher the magic efficiency, the less mana was required in order to cast a spell. As mana control ability increased, it became possible for one to more intricately shape the form of magic according to one's will. That meant I could make the shoddy ice ladder I built to flee from Charles Hall look a lot better. In addition, it had the advantage of speeding up the casting speed of magic. In my case, it should be possible to shorten the preparation time required to activate Frost Explosion. In the game, it was just a dialogue, but here it's real. Well, I could think of it as part of my training. The theme is Elemental Flower. If you have an ice or rock element, it will be a level 3 challenge. For other elemental types, it will be a level 2 challenge. It was only natural. For the ice or rock elements, once the elemental flower was created, there was nothing left to do beyond the final carving. For elements such as fire, water, lightning, and wind, it was necessary to continuously maintain the form of the elemental flower, requiring a higher level of mana mastery. For example, refer to the textbook. It would be more effective to practice elemental flowers in pairs, with 2 people helping one another. The performance evaluation will be in 3 days, and it will be during this time. Practice thoroughly. That's all. Let's start the lecture. When one student asked, "Professor, what if I don't have friends?" Professor Fernando gave a cold response, "Then do it on your own." I was still inexperienced in using magic. It might be a good opportunity to focus on developing my mana mastery for 3 days. Is the lecture over? As soon as class was over, Luz greeted me at the doorway of the classroom as if she had been waiting. A shiver ran down my spine for a moment, but I took a deep breath and tried to keep my composure. To my knowledge, this was the first time Luz had ever made a friend. She had always lived with her heart closed off to others, so she didn't know how to gauge emotional distance, which was why she was clinging to me to the point of it being burdensome. Her lack of common sense also contributed to this. Really, what should I do? In Magic Night of M.Reken, Luz didn't make any friends at all. The only reason she even slightly broke out of her loner status was due to her romance with the protagonist. Therefore, being friends with Luz was an area where my knowledge of games didn't apply. As I said before, I naturally assumed that it would be a casual friendship like Amy and Mateo's gang, but that was a mistake. I let out a sigh. In the end, I left school with Luz. While walking around the academy grounds, the magic department students' attention was drawn to me, their eyes filled with envy, resentment, and doubt were directed at me in unison. It was only natural, no matter how many times I said it. Luz was the top seat of the magic department's first year, and an official heroine in the game, and she ranked in the top 5 for her beauty in the whole academy, and yet she was showing me a smile she had never shown anyone else. Not to mention the fact that she was following me around. These kids are really causing my heart to be in bittersweet agony. Under normal circumstances, I would have felt smug, but considering my position, I just felt helpless. What the hell? It wasn't that I hated Luz, but I couldn't have her sticking to me like a piece of chewing gum. Luz, I have somewhere to go, can't you stay with me a little longer? Luz kept her head down, as if she knew what I was going to say. I know you have to train, but even for a little bit, I've had a lot of fun today. Oh, don't stimulate my emotions. It's heartbreaking. Judging by Luz's reaction, parting ways from her right now might have the opposite effect. Her feelings of wanting to hang out with her friend would fuel her, meaning, tomorrow could be even worse than today. And if she follows her feelings and kidnaps and imprisons the protagonist, it's extra bad. End point 13. This was an urgent mission. I needed to reduce the time I spend with Luz. Just to the level of my current friends. So, today, I'd better honor Luz's wishes and spend some more time together and then have a serious talk. I just so happened to have the perfect excuse, something that would benefit me, and something that would appeal to Luz's desire to spend more time with me. I'm going to practice my elemental flower crafting from now on. Doesn't Class A have the same topic for the performance evaluation? Yeah, do you want me to help you? Her first response was not, do you want to do it together, but, do you want me to help you? For Luz, it seemed like crafting elemental flowers was a piece of cake. Anyway, if someone with excellent mana control like Luz helped me, I'd be more than happy. I'll be in your care then. A gentle smile spread across Luz's face. Luz and I returned to Orphan Hall and found an empty classroom. The door to the small classroom was open. We went inside and sat across from each other at a single table. I took off my coat and hung it on the back of the walnut chair next to me. Evening. The sunset's light was seeping through the windows into the classroom. However, it was not yet the time to light a luminous lamp. First of all, the elemental flower asked of me is a level 3 challenge, right? And since you are a water element user, it's level 2 for you. Isaac, do you know how to do it? I can manage up to level 2, but level 3 feels a little daunting. I took out the textbook and flipped to the Magic Craft section to look at an example of the level 3 elemental flower. It had a picture of a hydrangea model, and it looked quite intimidating. Let's start by warming up. I rolled up my shirt sleeves and began to channel mana with both hands on the desk to create ice crafts. Ice generation, ice element, 1. Firstly, I started with an easy dot-to-dot make model of a baby hippo and a cannon. What is this? It looks cute. It's a baby hippo. Whoever touches it is fucked. Oh, so there's such a thing. Then what about this? I've never seen one. Neil Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong Cannon. I don't know what it is, but it looks highly complete. Okay, I can do this. Next, I managed to pull off level 1. A simple elemental flower with a few petals, and a slightly more difficult level 2 elemental flower. Luz quietly clapped her hands and exclaimed, "Wow, great job." Excited, I went on to challenge level 3, the ice hydrangea. "I'll try too," said Luz as she began to create her own elemental flower by channeling water mana from her seat. Water generation, water element, 1. My head was about to explode trying to pay attention to the design of each petal. It was incredibly difficult to control mana in such a delicate way. In the end, what I made was just a block of ice that looked like granite with holes here and there. Level 3 was just too much for me. On the other hand, what emerged on Luz's side was a very sophisticated and detailed hydrangea model. The water element maintained the shape of a hydrangea, boasting an incredibly fast and complex flow of water. It was as if a new law of physics had been established within that flower. With the best and worst results in front of us, Luce and I fell silent. Pretty good. It was my praise that broke the silence first. It was truly astonishing perfection. It did, however, bruise my pride a bit. If I could get help from Luce, who was this good, I could improve my magic crafting skills much faster than if I did it by myself. I'll help you, Isaac. Thanks, huh? Suddenly, Luce put her hands on the backs of mine. I was startled by the sudden physical contact, but I quickly composed myself as Luce started pouring out mana to create a mold made of water. I began pouring my ice mana into the mold. Don't elementalize your mana, instead, let it flow freely for the time being. And remember this sensation. Luce's intimate tone tickled my eardrums. Her pale, slender hands were soft and warm to the touch. Her water mana flowed gently through the back of my hand. The light blue ice mana that had yet to be elementalized was becoming an elaborate hydrangea. My mana was fitting into the mold that Luce had created with her water mana. It was similar to pouring a drink into a specific mold and freezing it to form a popsicle. Even the water that Luce created was flowing so fast, that I couldn't see any signs of it freezing under the influence of my ice mana. Wow, amazing! How can something so difficult become so easy? A hydrangea model so elaborate that it was hard to believe it was made with my mana was about to be completed. I'm going to release it now. Not yet. Ah. When Luce suddenly tried to release her own mana, I hurriedly stopped her. The reason why I hadn't turned my mana into ice yet was because I wanted to create a higher quality ice hydrangea. Luce, on the other hand, had already removed the flower mold before I could even say anything. But as soon as she heard my voice, she tried to re-elementalize the mana that had been released, but it was too late. In the end, my mana, which wasn't in an elemental state yet, and Luce's mana clashed and caused an elemental reaction. The mana force field was to blame. It was the force that repels mana away from one another. It happens when mana that hasn't yet been elementalized collides, a phenomenon that only appears between the mana of living beings. That was why I couldn't use the trick of activating ice generation inside the enemy's body. Eventually, the unstable water element and my ice mana spread like a watering can in all directions. Cheawa. The light blue ice mana scattered in the air, while the water made of Luce's mana splattered all over our bodies. Before we knew it, we were like mice soaked in water. Water dripped, drop by drop, from my damp hair. Luce glared at me, her face dripping with water. The silence lasted for a while as we stared into each other's eyes, when... Puhaha! Luce burst out laughing. Ahahahaha! Ha 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 ha! What are you laughing at, girl? Luce laughed, even as she wiped the tears from her eyes. It was like watching a gag that suited your taste on a comedy show, and you start laughing out loud. To be honest, I found the whole situation hilarious as well. The more I thought about it, the funnier it became, and the more I started laughing out loud. It was probably influenced by Luce's laughter. Oh, that's so funny. My stomach hurts. Come to think of it, it was the first time I had ever seen Luce burst into laughter so happily. In Magic Night of M. Raken, she always wore a stoic face, only occasionally displaying a gentle smile. It was a strange feeling. I got hit right in the face. Ha 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 ha. When I said something ridiculous, Luce burst out laughing again. I burst out laughing as well, and we both happily laughed for a while. Oh, I'll wipe it off you. Soon after, Luce took out her handkerchief from the school uniform jacket hanging on the chair next to her and stood up. She leaned towards me with her upper body resting on the desk. You could just evaporate, you know. You can't get rid of water magic that has seeped into your clothes. Luce responded while wiping my face with her handkerchief. Evaporate was similar to my defrost. It was to undo one's own water magic. Come to think of it, even in Magic Night of M.Riken, after using water magic and evaporate, the wet clothes did not dry. It was the same when they got dirt on their clothes. They could only get rid of the stagnant water. As I thought about it, I raised my eyes and gasped for breath at the ecstasy that spread across my vision. Luce's assertive chest was right in front of my nose. Her black underwear peered through her water-soaked white shirt. My eyes darted to the side, then back to the mesmerizing view, then back to the side again. Where are you looking at? Like a scene from a thriller, my heart sank. I lifted my head in remorse and saw Luce's face peering down at me. Her face lit up with amusement, her cheeks flushing with a rosy hue. A mischievous grin spread across her youthful face, damp with sweat, as it glistened in the warm glow of the sunset. Isaac, you pervert. Luce's intimate voice tickled my ears like a feather. That brief moment felt like an eternity to me. Chapter 36. Shield. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Shield. The colorful leaves were turning dark green with the passage of time, and the warm season was just around the corner. Due of the mildly warm weather, students had begun to take off their school uniform jackets. I was no different. Yesterday was the performance evaluation for the elemental flower craft. Although not perfect, I was able to achieve a satisfactory result. It was all thanks to Luce helping me every time I practiced. We had decided how we would spend our time together. Even if we did choose to meet, it would be in private with just the two of us. As a justification, I reiterated that I stand out too much when I'm with Luce. She appeared to have enjoyed our friendship so much that she couldn't help but regret it. It seemed that she expected a daily routine of going to and from school together, eating together, and hanging out together, regardless of what others thought. What could I do? I wasn't in a position to do that. And, as expected, rumors were already spreading that there was an unusual atmosphere between Luce and I. Well, it was already spilled water. There was nothing I could do about it now. Sooner or later, I'll have to pretend to be as incompetent as possible so that they'll stop paying attention to me and think, Isaac's a hopeless bastard, and the top seat has gone off the deep end. If Alice Carroll ever heard about the rumor regarding the two of us, I could only hope that she would think it wasn't a big deal and move on. Hey! I am going to be the test proctor for the end of semester evaluation for this freshman year. I was in a corner of the butterfly garden at noon with the sky shining brightly. It was the weekend. Today, I planned to spend twice as much time practicing magic than I usually did. This was because I took up quite a bit of time practicing magic craft. Even today, Dorothy Hartnova sat with her back against a nearby Zelkova tree and interrupted my training with her chatter. But this time, her chatter was worth listening to. It was a story that had a lot to do with the scenario. Aren't you a senior? Wouldn't you normally hate that kind of trouble in the first place? Nyahaha, of course. But because this elder sister wants to see if our president will do well in his exam. Aren't you so honored as a fan of mine? Ah yes. It is an honor. That reaction is boring, Dorothy pouted her lips and grumbled. Originally, being a test proctor was not a position that students could be entrusted with. However, the Academy's administration has been plagued by the appearance of demons recently. In the end, it was decided that the strongest students within the Academy would be chosen as test proctors. One of these candidates was Dorothy Hartnova. It was the same as the original scenario of Magic Night of M.Riken. Without Dorothy, the Thunderbird subjugation itself would be impossible. Because without her, the odds were stacked against the Academy. I even got rid of the student council president. My head twitched. Alice Carroll volunteered as a test proctor. The student council president. Yeah, because she said she wanted to do it too. So we made a bet and I won. It was different from the scenario I knew. It was clear that she had taken it upon herself to find out who was going around fighting the demons. I asked Dorothy what kind of bet it was, and she answered that it was a violent one. I didn't ask any further questions. Thank goodness, in the end, it was a great relief that Alice Carroll, the student council president, didn't become the test proctor. I let out a sigh of relief and muttered to myself, but Dorothy's ears perked up as she wrapped herself in starlight manna, and flew towards me. Do you like me being that? Ah, I was just talking to myself. As usual, Dorothy stuck her head out to me and asked me with a lively smile. I nodded. I didn't want to disappoint her, even if it was just a misunderstanding. Yes. I'm a fan of yours, Senior, so no doubt. I really was glad that she became the test proctor. That thought was sincere, without a hint of doubt. Thanks to that, the scenario didn't go awry. Dorothy let out her signature, Nihihai, laughter and brightened up with a smile as bright as the sun. Magic Night of M. Reken. Act 3, Chapter 3, End of Semester Evaluation leads directly to Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. At that time, Luce's 8-star familiar, Thunderbird Gallia, became a demon. Dorothy, who played the role of a test proctor, would be a key player in the Thunderbird subjugation along with the main character, Ian Fairytale. Originally, in a 1.1 fight, Dorothy was strong enough to defeat the Thunderbird. However, the battle would have been fierce enough that the entire surrounding land would vanish. Since Dorothy had to fight while protecting people, she couldn't rush into a full-on fight with all her strength. If she did, they would all die. This was where the protagonist Ian came into play, as he could deliver the killing blow with his light element, which was the demon's weakness. Do you like me, President? Suddenly, Dorothy opened her mischievous eyes and asked with a sinister laugh. That expression seems a bit ambiguous. Oh my. I wonder if our cute junior has heard this embarrassing talk. Dorothy flashed me a mischievous grin and tilted her head towards the schoolgirl that stood at a distance from me. Rose-gold hair cascaded down around her face, and the sides of her head were adorned with morpho butterfly-colored braids. She was my classmate and one of the official heroines, Luce Eltania. She had her arms crossed with an expressionless face as her eyes were locked with Dorothy's. Luce exuded an oppressive aura of unspoken pressure as if warning me not to speak, a pressure that enveloped my entire body and struck fear into my heart. Ugh, chills, even someone as bright as Dorothy was not immune to Luce's antisocial persona. It's not like it's anything to be embarrassed about. By the way, Dorothy didn't even like me, but today, she was using a lot of ambiguous expressions as if she were secretly flirting. Of course, I didn't hate it. My favorite character, Dorothy, felt like a lovely daughter. Of course, I have never been married, let alone had a daughter, but that was the general feeling. Dorothy covered her mouth with her right hand and flashed a sly smile. Didn't the president say he likes me? Isn't that kind of embarrassing? I said that I liked that Senior became the test proctor, didn't I? No matter how I look at it, that's the context, isn't it? What a nice boy, you're so embarrassed. How cute. Nihihai. Dorothy, being shorter than me, stretched out her right arm and stroked my hair. First of all, thank you for the fan service. Afterward, Dorothy hummed a tune as she returned to the Zelkova tree. She then leaned back against the tree, pulled out an unknown book from the witch's hat on her head, and began to read. I straightened the hair that Dorothy had stroked. There was a lot of physical contact these days. Dorothy was not an official heroine in Magic Night of M. Reken, and she was an opponent whose mind I couldn't read with psychological insight. Even though she was my favorite character, it was difficult to tell if her behavioral pattern changes were accidental or if there was a cause. I didn't have enough information to make an informed decision. Isaac, let's get started, said Luce in a soothing voice. I turned my head towards her. Her expression, which had been ice-cold when facing Dorothy, softened to a gentle smile when she saw me. It truly was a dramatic change of expression. Please take good care of me. Come on, Rock. This bellow will deal with you. Q. Besides Luce, the little killer whale magic beast, Bello, was busily swimming through the air with water mana wrapped around her body. Next to me, Eden, the small golem magic beast, tilted his head and pretended to be cute. Luce said she would help me with my training over the weekend, and here she was. I readily agreed because we were out of sight and Dorothy was not a threat. Luce had an excited expression on her face at that time, and her cheeks were flushed enough to make me blush. I should have been happy, but she seemed to be the one who was most excited. Of course, as soon as she saw Dorothy, she reflexively raised her guard. Dorothy was briefly offended by Luce, who was cold to her, but seemed to understand as a senior and took a step back. Eden, prepare for battle. Q. Luce was the top student of the first year at the magic department. Among the freshmen, there was no one stronger than her. Even though she was using over half of her original power to suppress the Thunderbird. She extended her right hand towards me. Then, a blue magic circle appeared in front of her hand and slowly began to rotate. I could feel a dense mana that made my whole body shudder. Motivation surged through me. I conjured up cold ice flames, frost fire, in each hand and faced Luce. From now on, I would engage in a duel with her. I would cast magic at her, block or dodge her magic, and so on. Dueling with her would be of great help to me in the mastery of magic warfare. Soon, Luce and I began to battle each other with magic. Ugh! It was more like a one-sided assault. I guess I was right after all. Near the butterfly garden. On a certain hillside. Eva Hylov, a glasses-wearing schoolgirl, was hiding behind a tree, secretly watching Isaac and his group. She was a student at the bottom of Class D of the Magic Department, but had a talent that other students of the Magic Department did not have. It was her stealth magic that allowed her to conceal her own presence. In the eyes of others, her translucent body was indistinguishable from the surrounding landscape. Is there something special about you, Isaac? A male student with silver-blue hair. She recognized him because they were in the same Class D. His name was Isaac. He was the one who surprised the students by using 5-star magic during the dueling evaluation, despite having the lowest grade. E when he measured his mana at the start of the semester. It was an amazing sight, but it was quickly forgotten. Even if a grade. E wizard consistently polished his skills and achieved tremendous growth in a short period of time, he only succeeded in mastering 5-star magic at an immature level. In front of those who were already capable of using 5-star magic at a high level, it would only look like that. Then there was the light element, indisputable in terms of rarity, which had appeared. As a result, Isaac's single use of 5-star magic was hardly enough to make him stand out. For constellations. A student faction that could be involved in the administration of M.Raken Academy. Eva Hylov was one of them, an intelligence gatherer chosen to represent the Red Elephant seat. The 4 constellations could each recruit 10 first-year students as members starting from the second semester, so they secretly competed to recruit talent and collect information from the first semester. So, the 4 constellations secretly approached students who had abilities that seemed to be useful for information gathering but were below the middle of the pack and could never even imagine of joining a constellation. They would whisper sweet proposals such as, "Gather some useful information. If you perform well, we will let you into our constellation." Just being affiliated with one of the 4 constellations was attractive, even outside of the academy, so most people, whether they were interested in the power within the academy or not, accepted the offer. Eva Hylov was one such recipient of the offer. The top seat Ice Princess, cold to everyone, friendly to only one person, and that's you. A few days ago, Eva had overheard a rumor that Luce Eltania, the #1 target for recruitment, showed a particularly cheerful side only to Isaac. So she started keeping a close eye on Isaac, and the harvest had exceeded her expectations. Don't overdo it. Whenever I see our president in pain, this elder sister's heart aches. Oh, thank you for your kind words. M.Raken Academy's strongest. A genius who seems to have received Lord Manhala's blessing. The second year's top seat. The Star Witch. Dorothy Hartnova, the sophomore girl who had been called all of those, was wiping Isaac's face with her own handkerchief. Besides, he's even involved with the famous senior Dorothy. Dorothy didn't belong to any of the constellations. Naturally, the four constellations had tried their best to recruit her, but she had flatly refused every offer, saying she wasn't interested. She was self-assertive, self-centered, and lived in her own world. To think that such a monster was staying with Isaac. It was amazing. It was clear that Luce and Dorothy had favorable feelings for Isaac. It was unclear whether it was a crush between the opposite sex or a friendship between friends, but either way, the fact that two monsters from the magic department were hanging out around Isaac was important information. What is it about Isaac that makes him so special to those two? Eva monologued to herself in a low voice. Isaac seemed to have something special enough to attract those two, but what the hell was it? I'll have to report to the right people and talk to the seniors first. It was then. Dorothy, who had been wiping Isaac's face, turned her gaze to Eva. In an instant, shivers ran down Eva's spine. She was in stealth mode and this magic consumed very little mana. Even Eva's measly grade D+ mana was very small. In other words, there was no way she could be detected at this distance. No, I overlooked it. Dorothy was a monster among monsters. It was highly likely that her mana perception transcended common sense. Eva quickly ducked behind a tree and leaned back. Her breathing quickened. She was terrified. She was an inferior class D student with nothing to show for it other than stealth, a commoner whose last name was her hometown name. If she was caught spying on Isaac, she wasn't sure what she could do, especially against those monsters. Phew. After a while, Eva took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She poked her head to the side of the tree and looked back at Isaac. Isaac and Luce were clashing spells again, while Dorothy leaned back against a Zelkova tree, watching their duel, one-sided assault. Was it because of my mood? Just then, as she breathed a sigh of relief, a white cat with a pink ribbon on its tail approached Eva. An imprint of its owner on its back. It was a familiar. Hello there, friend. The white cat greeted her with the voice of a mature lady. She greeted Eva so casually, that Eva forgot that she was in stealth for a moment. Why are you spying on my Dorothy? Eva's face turned pale. Because she realized that the white cat, Ella, was Dorothy's familiar. No, it was Isaac. Eva's shoulders trembled. Ella's sharp eyes did not miss that response. Where are you from? Black tiger. Blue wolf. Golden eagle. Red elephant. Well, the four constellations have certainly been annoying recently. Why do they keep doing the same things? Eva asked in confusion, but she understood exactly what Ella meant by that. There were other students who had heard the rumors and followed Isaac. It was obvious that they were in the same position as her. Then, Dorothy's message. Kararara, a sudden cluster of colorful stars appeared in the air. The starlight spell that Dorothy had implanted in Ella was activated. I know your purpose. It's irritating, so can you stop being such a nuisance? The starlight magic surrounded Eva on all sides, leaving her with nowhere to escape to. Eek. Fear engulfed Eva like a tidal wave, causing her whole body to tremble violently. Dorothy's magic seemed to weigh heavily on her. Before long, Ella chuckled and withdrew Dorothy's starlight magic. Keep what you've learned between us if possible. Otherwise, who knows what Dorothy might do? She might even completely get rid of the four constellations, depending on her mood. Because of you. In the first place, there was no one who could stop Dorothy Hartnova at M.Riken Academy. Her presence at the academy could only be described as the equivalent of a large-scale natural disaster, simply playing around with students. Eva released her stealth, which no longer meant anything, and nodded her head hastily with a frightened face. Yes, yes. Her sobbing voice cracked. Eva bowed her upper body to Ella, and quickly ran away from the area. Scary, Eva sniffled and disappeared from Ella's sight. Ella breathed out a deep sigh. This was already the fourth time she had driven out the stalkers under Dorothy's orders. My Dorothy is finally starting to show some interest in a boy, but why is it that they can't leave her alone? Don't disturb my Dorothy's pure love. For the record, Dorothy never said that she had a crush on Isaac. More accurately, she said she was curious. Well, curiosity was a very good emotion for love to sprout. Ella was like a mother rooting for her daughter to find a good man and live a happy life. In the first place, just watching people fall in love was fun. Dorothy said that a friend with a crush on Isaac had arrived today. She seemed excited at the thought of teasing the girl with rose gold hair. She wasn't sure of Dorothy's true feelings, but if she had any affection towards Isaac at all. Ella hoped that her master wouldn't regret him being stolen away. But what is there to see in that child? I don't think there's anything special about it other than being cute. Even made me eat firecrackers for him. Fwa. Ugh. Q. The sight of Isaac and his golem familiar Eden being swept away by Luce's water magic was reflected in Ella's eyes. Ella furrowed one eyebrow. Ooh, that must have hurt, but Isaac scrambled to his feet and fought back against Luce. Eden, get up, let's go. Q, you. Ugh hi. Q. Ella sat there and watched the duel, one-sided assault, between Isaac and Luce. Still, the man's willpower was admirable. Chapter 37. End of Semester Evaluation 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. End of Semester Evaluation 1. It's almost time for the end of semester evaluation. Inside Class A's classroom in Orphan Hall. The top 5 students who arrived for class that morning were seated far apart from one another. It was an overwhelmingly large space for the number of students present. They were looking at Philip Meltron, a middle-aged professor with red hair, standing in front of the podium. With his hands behind his back, he made his announcement in a gentle tone. The end of semester evaluation consists of 2 parts. A written test and a practical test. The written test will be held for 5 days, 9 hours a day, and the practical exams will be held on the grounds of the old academy for 5 hours. You are the elite of the elite, nobles among nobles, and I trust you will all achieve excellent grades in the end. Nobles among nobles. Professor Philip, who was notorious among his students as discriminatory, frequently used this phrase to describe his class of students. Of course, for the 5 class of female students, it was a compliment with little meaning. Lisetta Lionheart, a female student who wore a male school uniform with her shirt unbuttoned. Caridna White-Clark, who always wore a sinister smile for no apparent reason. Seal Karndas, who was always dozing off. Kaya Astrian, with her sparkling eyes and soldierly demeanor. And Lou Seltania, the pinnacle of the first years, and indifferent to everyone. Professor Philip was pleased with his Class A, which was made up of all the best and brightest students, and none of the commoners that he disliked. Seal Karndas, will you be dozing off like that during the end of semester evaluations? Seal Karndas, a beautiful girl with short, wavy blue hair, shook her head and struggled to keep her eyes open. It wasn't the first time she dozed off in class, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. This was an insincere attitude that would reduce her attitude score, but Philip, who was intolerant of commoners and generous to nobles, tended to let it slide every time as if there were no problems. The words he'd spoken earlier had been half in jest. Seal wiped the drool from her face with her sleeve, then rubbed her helplessly open eyes and looked at Philip. Maybe, excluding Luce, who was not interested in others, the other 3 students looked at her in disbelief. Philip just let out a friendly smile. Well, let's start class then. Professor Philip was now used to Class A, which was filled with weirdos. I will now explain the rules of the FEL card competition, the practical exam for the end of semester evaluation. Finally, the Act 3, Chapter 3, end of semester evaluation part of Magic Night of M.Rken had begun. Up until last week, I had to take the written exam for a total of 5 days, 9 hours each day. It was so hard to actually do something that was easily skipped in the game. In particular, the subjects were especially stressful. Introduction to Basic Magic, Study of Basic Elements, Ecology of Magic Beasts, Study of Magic Tools, Analysis of Magic Circles, etc. Since I came from a liberal arts background, I felt like I was dying while trying to solve calculation problems. I could only study so much on top of my training, so I was unable to fully grasp all the materials before I took the exam. But I gave it my best shot, so I expect to get a decent grade. This was the site of the old M.Rken Academy. It used to be a functioning school, but was now closed. The first-year students of the magic department, including myself, stood in the site in an orderly fashion. Closed buildings with beautiful exteriors were nearby, as were gardens overgrown with weeds due to neglect. On the stage in front of the students, Professor Fernando was speaking with a megaphone. Behind him stood the professors and exam proctors. The rules are simple. If you collect 5 of these FEL cards and bring them to the designated location for submission, you pass the exam. Professor Fernando levitated a card with telekinesis magic and showed it to the students. It was a sophisticated card with a symbol representing a grimoire and a wizard. The FEL cards are hidden throughout the sprawling grounds of the old academy. They will be difficult to find, as they emit only the faintest trace of mana. The radius of the old M.Rken Academy grounds was unknown, but it should be considered comparable to Uedo in Korea. Anyways, it was rather spacious. The submission location will be revealed once you have collected 5 FEL cards. It will be assigned at random, so don't be surprised if you happen to discover the location by chance. By the way, it is possible to steal FEL cards. If you knock out a student with a FEL card, it will be transferred to you. It is enchanted with telekinesis magic. The student started whispering. I can't fight, what should I do? Isn't this just another survival rule? These conversations were ongoing. It was exactly the same repertoire as during the class placement evaluation. Meanwhile, I caught sight of the test proctor, Dorothy Hartnova, who was standing behind Professor Fernando. She tilted her head and waved her hand at me, her smile as bright as the sun. The star and moon earrings on her earlobes glistened in the sunlight. My favorite is too cute, I waved back and greeted her while trying to hold back my dad-like laughter. But for some reason, the cheeky boys around me saw Dorothy's smile and blushed. I'm sorry, but that greeting is mine, kids. And the biggest part of this semester's end semester evaluation is. Professor Fernando extended his index finger upward. The students followed his gesture and looked up at the sky. It means that the information from 1st to 5th place will be disclosed in real time. A large amount of mana grains that looked like sand were engraved in the crystal clear sky. There were 2 large squares, and inside each square, there were 5 vertical lines of inscriptions. It was enormous. FEL eliminations, the left column shows who has the most FEL cards, while the right column shows who has eliminated the most students. It was a live broadcast of those who ranked 1st through 5th in terms of card count and kill count, respectively. Now, take a look at the bracelets we handed out. The students looked down at the bracelets handed out by the Academy's administrators as per Professor Fernando's instructions. They were all wearing one on their wrist. Each bracelet had a button with the words FEL and eliminations on it. The bracelet cannot be removed until the end of semester evaluation is over. As long as it's on, your location will be relayed to us in real time. This bracelet was like a GPS with magical powers. If you pass the end of semester evaluation, it will unlock itself on its own. And you can use it to check where the students rank from 1st to 5th are. Take their fel cards or run away, it's up to you. Whatever choice you make will be reflected in the evaluation, so act carefully. In other words, this was a survival game, a game of wits, and a game of control. It was a method to evaluate overall mana perception, combat ability, tactical ability, and problem-solving skills as a wizard. The time limit is 5 hours. Collect 5 fel cards within that time, and arrive at the designated location for submission. At that time, you can take off the bracelet and go home. Even if you bring more than 5 fel cards, there will be no bonus points, so don't do anything unnecessary. Professor, what happens if I fail the exam? When a male student raised his hand and asked, Fernando explained with his usual icy face. If a student becomes incapacitated or fails to pass the exam within the time limit, they will have to take compulsory supplementary classes later today. Ha! The students were taken aback, but they quickly calmed down when Professor Fernando casually extended his hand. This is a penalty. I won't even unlock your bracelets in case you try to run away, he said, as if he didn't care about their complaints. Students either reacted with fright or disgust. Finally, today marks the end of your first semester. May you reap the fruits of your labor. That's all there is to it. When Professor Fernando was done, the facilitator next to him directed everyone to board the carriage. As the students began to grumble and leave, I started to walk away. Suddenly, Dorothy turned to me, cupped her hands around her mouth, and mouthed the word, good luck. Literally, fighting. Used in Korean to cheer on someone and to wish someone good luck. It is used to express encouragement and to show support for a person's actions. Then she stretched her right arm upward and gave me a silent wave. Ah, she's so cute. I'm gonna die. A group of small carriages that had been modified to resemble minicars waited behind the site. You could hop in any of them, and they would take you to a designated location. I chose a carriage and decided to organize my thoughts as we rode to the designated location. The final part of the first semester of the first year, the end of semester evaluation and the Thunderbird subjugation. I had already planned everything. During the end of semester evaluation, around the time Luce passed the exam and nightfall was approaching, the demon, Vera the Summoner, appeared to steal Luce's familiar. It wouldn't be unreasonable to consider her one of the strongest in the world of magic knight of M.Raken, particularly when it came to controlling familiars, as she possessed an extreme level of dominance over them. That demon forcibly summoned Luce's familiar, Thunderbird Gallia, and placed the familiar under her control. The demon then goes to the examination center and tries to kill the main character, Ian Fairytale, but was later foiled by Dorothy's intervention. When Dorothy was forced to retreat for the sake of the students' safety, the demon would unleash the barrier of the Thunderbird and enshroud the site of the old M.Raken Academy. If I didn't pass the end of semester evaluation before that, my plan to kill Vera the Summoner at the optimal time would be thrown out the window. In other words, my purpose was to pass the end of semester assessment as quickly as possible, remove the bracelet, and set myself free. It was to prepare for Magic Knight of M.Raken, Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation Part. As a side note, there was no option to miss the exam. If I did not attend the exam for reasons other than those specified in the Marx Treaty, I would be automatically expelled. Phew, ha. I inhaled and exhaled to relieve the tension I felt. Now, it was time to check my current status. There had been no dramatic change in my stats from the day I defeated Lifa the Elusive until now. Ice Sovereign, which was always active, was still unusable, so I've been suppressing it to the point where it didn't even have an effect. Still, I did achieve a higher level of growth than I expected at the beginning of the semester. It was thanks to defeating the Disaster Ant Corp and Lifa the Elusive. Status, Name: Isaac LV. Gender: Male. Year: First title: Freshman Mana. 1450/1450, mana recovery speed, C, stamina, B. Strength, B. Intelligence, C+, willpower, B+, potential. Details. Combat skills, Elemental Series 1. Ice, Elemental Firepower, B. Elemental Efficiency, B. Elemental Synergy, B. Elemental Series 2, Locked, Own Skills, Active, 1, Ice Generation, B, /5, Black Ice, B. 2, Ice Curtain, B. 1, Cold Divergence, B. 1, Basic Protection Magic, D+, 4, Frost Fire, C, 4, Ice Wall, C, 5, Frost Explosion, C. 2, Snow Pellets, C, Passive, 7, Psychological Insight, 5, Demon Detection, 9, Ice Sovereign Skill Tree. Details. Unique Attributes, Hunter. My current level was 57. I had recently gained one more level. My growth rate was snail-like in comparison with the top students, but that was the way Isaac was, so I couldn't help it. I just had to deal with it. For reference, I had invested the newly acquired 2 stat points in learning efficiency. I've grown a lot from being the weakest in one semester. Of course, it still felt like there were more students in the first grade who I couldn't beat yet. We have arrived, students. Work hard. Thank you. I bid the coachman farewell and got off the carriage. We arrived at Siren Hall, a 4-story stone building surrounded by green foliage and vines. It was originally designed that way, but due to neglect, even the windows were now overgrown with plants. All I needed were 5 fell cards. But as soon as I got the fell cards, my name would shoot to the top of the rankings, and all the first-year students would know where I was. After that, I'll become everyone's target. And I would undoubtedly be attacked. In other words, the main goal was to survive until I collected 5 fell cards and arrived at the submission location. I needed to do it as quickly as possible, but what rank should I be? I did some quick math and came to the conclusion that I should be able to pass while ranking first or second. That's a hell of a difficulty level. It's a test I've played countless times in Magic Knight of M.Reken. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. Please work out as planned. To get rid of my worries, I warmed up my body by lightly stretching. And soon. Pang! In the center of the old M.Reken Academy grounds, firecrackers loudly exploded, signaling the start of the exam. I swallowed my dry saliva and started running straight ahead, ignoring Siren Hall right behind me. Footnotes. Chapter 38. End of Semester Evaluation, 2, you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. End of Semester Evaluation, 2, Survival Rules. It's been a long time. Her light green pigtails fluttered in the early summer breeze. Kaya Astrian, first year second seat of the magic department. She was wandering around the grounds of the old M.Reken Academy, holding a wand while remaining alert. The fell cards were supposed to be discovered via mana perception. However, no matter how much she wandered around, she could only sense natural mana without any abnormalities. Furthermore, she couldn't solely focus on mana perception in a situation where she had to prepare for ambushes from other students. During the class placement evaluation, the mana emitted from the mana grains was easy to detect, so she had nothing to worry about, even while she was on high alert. But the end of semester evaluation was different. The mana emitted by the fell cards was so difficult to detect that it was incomparable to mana grains. However, if she only focused on detecting mana, it would be difficult for her to stay alert, so she was in a pickle. Will Sir Isaac do the same? No, he wouldn't. Sir Isaac is an amazing person. Kaya cleared her mind and concentrated on her mana perception as well as her alertness. If she struggled in a place like this, she would never be able to catch up with Isaac for the rest of her life. She hoped to one day be strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the man she admired. Focus, focus. She hoped to breeze through this type of exam. Suddenly, she heard a clink. Clink sound coming from the sky. It was the sound of small particles colliding against one another. Kaya raised her head. She saw the scoreboard that Professor Fernando had mentioned before. The mana grains engraved with telekinesis magic were slowly changing their shape. And then fell, first place, red, Matteo Giordana fell card +1, an unexpected name was listed on the scoreboard on the left. It was the ranking of fell card holders. Did he find one already? Even that man. This hurt her pride. Come to think of it, didn't they say that the locations of the students ranked 1st to 5th could be located? Kaya raised her left arm and examined the bracelet around her wrist. Each bracelet was engraved with the words "fell" and "eliminations." When she put her finger on the word "fell," the mana grains inside the bracelet oozed out and formed a map on the bracelet. Someone had stored magic with certain rules into the bracelet. It was an awe-inspiring level of mana mastery. Professor Fernando was also an excellent telekinetic wizard, but the capabilities of this bracelet were far beyond his level. There was only one person on this island who could use this level of telekinesis magic. The magic of the Hegel Tower Master. Aria Lilias, the Tower Master of the Hegel Magic Tower. This must be her work. The mana grains represented the grounds of the old M.Raken Academy. Kaya diligently studied the map. Kaya's location was indicated by a light green grain among the light yellow mana grains. In one location, she noticed a red mana grain slowly moving. It appeared to be Matteo Giordana. So, next to the first place marker, red was written, meaning Matteo was being marked with a red mana grain. Matteo Giordana is here. Come to think of it, I can't seem to go to the outskirts or Carly Hall. I guess the entirety of the old academy grounds isn't being used for the examination site. The iconic building of the old M.Raken Academy was, of course, Carly Hall. At the far end of the old academy's grounds, perched on top of a high hill, was a palace-like building that overlooked the old academy grounds. They must have thought that the range would be too large if the building and its outskirts were used as exam sites, seeing as it didn't show up on the map. To be fair, the massive, transparent barrier that separated the exam sites didn't cover the entirety of the old academy grounds. Even with the naked eye, it was clear that the outskirts and Carly Hall were excluded from the exam site. Well, this was just a simple reference. Kaya touched the fell part of the bracelet once more. Then, the mana grains flowed into the bracelet like sand. By the way, she got a rough idea when she thought about it. If you get a fell card in the beginning, you're at a huge disadvantage. Fell cards must be hard to find. Kaya herself, who was confident in her mana perception, felt the same way, and she could only imagine how the other students felt. Therefore, being at the top of the rankings made you a target for many students. In that case, the structure of this exam became clear. The first half of the exam sets the stage for the top students. Of course, even if the opponent was a top-ranked student, there would be students who tried to attack them, but there wouldn't be too many of them. Since the victor was obvious. And once the top students have passed their exams, those below them would fight it out. As time went by, the grounds of the old M.Raken Academy would gradually become a battlefield for the weaker students. In other words, if one entered the rankings in the early stages, they were bound to be the target of many students, including the top-ranking students. In the end, it was a mind game after all. Especially for those who are average or weak, if they're lucky enough to make it into the top rankings early on, they would definitely be targeted, faster than anyone else. In conclusion, one would need to carefully consider whether to defeat Matteo and take his fell card or not. Even if they did defeat him and took his fell card, their name would stand out on the list. Kaya, no matter how strong she was, couldn't win against a stronger opponent. She needed to think carefully and act with caution. There's a lot to consider, she was already preoccupied with mana perception while she stayed on guard, but now she had to engage in this battle of wits as well. Her head was about to explode. Meanwhile, inside an abandoned store on the grounds of the old M.Riken Academy, the students were mercilessly firing elemental magic at a man. Whir. Boom. Why were TSK. The target was Matteo Giordana, a brown haired man who had climbed to the top of the rankings by being the only one with a fell card. Ha! It's meaningless to resist in front of me. Wind Generation, Wind Element, 1, Tristan Humphrey, the conceited blonde aristocrat, shouted from the rooftop of the abandoned store, while he looked down at Matteo. The surrounding area was dominated by Tristan's wind. The students Tristan had gathered while using his social status also took their positions and were all aiming at Matteo. There were a total of 4 students from Class B to Class C. 5-1. Despite the disadvantageous situation, Matteo leisurely smiled. Aren't you weaker than me, Tristan? You can't do anything unless you gang up on me. Provocation won't work, Matteo Giordana. My goal is not just you. It's to get the best ranking in this semester's end.of.term assessment. To make it clear to you and even the Grade E commoner how great I am. Grade E commoner. Are you talking about Isaac? Isn't that obvious? Who else can be a Grade E commoner other than him? Ha! He must be scrambling to survive right about now. Hoo-hoo, just thinking about it brings me joy. Matteo scratched his head with an uneasy expression. Tristan usually talked like a thug or a third-rate villain, but now that he thought about it, Tristan had never actually done anything cowardly to harm others. Even to someone he despised like Isaac. If someone pissed him off, he would say, I'll prove how great of a being I am with my grades kikik. And somehow, he always showed a sincere image of himself, which wasn't quite in character with a thug. Maybe that was why Tristan was sorta likable. Is that so? Then, shall I surrender? There was a sense of playfulness in Matteo's thick voice. With a slight raise of his arms, he recreated a scene from the dueling evaluation, which caused Tristan's subordinates to laugh, snap. A red vein appeared on Tristan's forehead. The word surrender was nothing more than an insult to his pride. He still trembled just thinking about the dueling evaluation. Oh, I'll kill you. Matteo Giordana. Tristan screamed at the top of his lungs and stretched out his arm towards Matteo, a light green magic circle appearing in front of him. Tristan unleashed a powerful whirlwind at Matteo, and Matteo countered by creating a thick wall of rock in front of himself. Whirlwind, Wind Element, 4, Rock Wall, Rock Element, 4, YIEIWI. DDDDDDDDDDDD. The rock wall remained steadfast even after being hit by Tristan's whirlwind. TSK. Wind Sword, Wind Element, 3, Tristan followed up with a sharp blade of wind, Wind Sword, but the result was the same. It was a stark contrast to when he had lightly slashed through Isaac's ice wall during the dueling evaluation. Matteo's defense was rock solid. Tristan suspected that even if he used the most powerful magic spell available to him, Matteo's defenses would be impenetrable. I'll have to use an elemental reaction to break through. Tristan glanced at his 4 men. If they could use elemental synergy, which increased their magic power by combining different elements, it would be enough to break through Matteo's defenses. Meanwhile, as Matteo and Tristan's group were having their showdown, Churuk Churuk, a new name began to appear on the scoreboard that was spread out in the air. Matteo and Tristan's group looked up to confirm the name. Eliminations, first place, Blue, Luz Eltania eliminations +1, it wasn't the scoreboard with Matteo's name on it, but the eliminations scoreboard next to it, where students are ranked according to how many they've eliminated. The name of the first-year top seed of the magic department was engraved on said scoreboard. Top seat. Matteo was the only one who had a fell card right now, so why did she kill someone? Tristan was taken aback. The purpose of this exam was to collect fel cards. Did the top seat eliminate another student for no reason? Suddenly, a question popped into Tristan's head. Come to think of it, why is there a eliminations ranking? If you thought about the exam structure, there wasn't a need for such a ranking, right? As he was thinking about it, an unbelievable sight began to unfold before his eyes. First place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +2, first place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +4, first place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +8, in the blink of an eye, the number of students loose eliminated was rapidly snowballing. First place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +10, first place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +12, first place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +15, it didn't stop. For some reason, she was on a killing spree. The top seat, this monster. Has she gone mad? A cold sweat ran down Tristan's cheeks. Matteo and Tristan both swallowed dryly and quickly grabbed their bracelets and pressed the eliminations button. A map made of mana grains unfolded before their eyes. Blue. The blue grain that represented the location of loose Eltania was reflected in their eyes. The devil was coming this way, to slaughter each and every one of them. Damn. Everyone, run. Loose Eltania is coming this way. Tisk, Tristan barked orders at his men while his eyes widened. Matteo clicked his tongue and began to flee as well. Now was not the time for them to fight amongst themselves. For now, they had to survive. Loose Eltania. None of the first-year students in the magic department stood a chance against her overwhelming strength. Especially when she was slaughtering them with such ferocity. If one came face to face with her, they would be eliminated without fail. Geyser, water element, 4, Paiwu. From Luce's position, a stream of steaming hot water wildly surged through the air, threatening to pierce the sky. It was an extremely skilled geyser. The helpless screams of the students who had been blown away by the geyser echoed powerlessly. Tristan was horrified and started fleeing in terror. No matter how conceited he was, it was always better to flee in the face of a monster you could never defeat. It was only then that he realized why there was an eliminations ranking. At the prestigious M.Riken Academy, there were always some freaks of nature who were admitted. Like Dorothy Hartnova, who was called the Star Witch, or Alice Carroll, the student council president. No matter how much M.Riken Academy's educational policy was said to be the law of the jungle, they couldn't just sit back and watch as the balance of the exam helplessly collapsed. Therefore, there may be many reasons, but the biggest reason for the creation of the eliminations ranking was: first place, blue, loose Eltania eliminations +18, when a predator appears, you should flee as quickly as possible. Third place, green, Kaya Astrian fel card +1, I finally found one. The underground warehouse of Duro's Hall was cluttered with old junk. As Kaya made her way through the junk, she could sense the faint but unusual mana. After she searched through the box where she sensed the mana, she was able to find one fel card. Kaya looked at the card and felt a rush of joy that made her heart race. Kaya, did you find the fel card already? Your skills are improving day by day. Kaya's expression melted as she imagined Isaac praising her cynically. He. She giggled as she put the fel card into the small pouch in her arms. It was a card case handed out in advance by the Academy's administration. I've got the hang of it now, Sir Isaac. 40 minutes into the exam. It was much harder to find a fel card than she had anticipated, but she managed to find one somehow. Not to mention, other students would eventually find fel cards as they narrowed down their search. However, the exam would increasingly take on the aspect of a battle royale. The top seat is the biggest problem. Loose Eltania. She was hunting students indiscriminately, regardless of fel cards. The scoreboard she had seen before she entered this building showed that she had already eliminated 34 people. She seemed to be purposely hunting down students and eliminating them. She must be sensing their mana, not their fel cards. Otherwise, her elimination count wouldn't have increased so dramatically. I wondered if she was trying to eliminate all the competition, so she could take her time searching for fel cards, or, if she was just killing for the sake of killing. Either way, it was a chilling thought. I want to fight with all my might at least once, but, Kaya had always had this thought when she looked at Luce. That was always the case with being the second seat. She felt like she was barely an arm's length away from the top seat, but not being able to close the distance was frustrating. But she needed to be realistic. Her current goal was to collect 5 fel cards within the time limit and achieve an excellent grade for the end of semester evaluation. That would be the best way to beat the top seat. Kaya left Duro's hall. Just in time, the engravings of the scoreboard that floated in the sky were changing. Fel, first place, red, Matteo Giordana fel card +1, second place, purple, Seal Carndas fel card +1, third place, green, Kaya Astrian fel card +1, fourth place, yellow, Tristan Humphrey fel card +1, eliminations, first place, blue, Luce Eltania eliminations +44, second place, yellow, Tristan Humphrey eliminations +1, Luce Eltania was still on a rampage. Seal Carndas, a freshman in the magic department and classmate of Kaya from Class A, seemed to have made her way up on the scoreboard while Kaya was looking for a fel card in the warehouse. Tristan Humphrey appeared to have claimed a card by eliminating the student who had gotten it just moments before. Gradually, the number of students who were getting fel cards was increasing. Naturally, it was the top students who dominated the rankings. What is Sir Isaac up to? However, Kaya's attention was drawn to Isaac rather than the top students. She had no idea what he was going to do. If he, who was widely perceived as weak, obtained 1 fel card and rose to the top of the rankings, there was no telling how chaotic the end of semester evaluations would become. Chapter 39. End of semester evaluation, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. End of semester evaluation, 3, Kaya garnered her second fel card by eliminating a Class B male student, and as a result of this, she discovered something new about the end of semester evaluation. It was that if she had a fel card, it would be listed as in her possession, even if she put it somewhere else. She was able to discover this when her fel card telekinetically flew away in the wrong direction after she had eliminated the male student. In other words, as long as she made physical contact with the card, it didn't matter even if she hid elsewhere. Of course, it didn't mean anything. If you could just defeat them, the card would come to you anyway. In any case, Kaya looked up at the scoreboard floating in the sky. A female student was raising her score at an alarming rate. Fel, first place, purple, Seal Carndas fel card +4, second place, green, Kaya Astrian fel card +2, third place, red, Matteo Giordana fel card +1, fourth place, yellow, Tristan Humphrey fel card +1, fifth place, blue, Luce Eltania fel card +1, eliminations, first place, blue, Luce Eltania eliminations +53, second place, yellow, Tristan Humphrey eliminations +4, third place, green, Kaya Astrian eliminations +4, fourth place, purple, Seal Carndas eliminations +3, Seal Carndas. After she found her first fel card, she found 3 more cards in a mere 30 minutes. Her speed was unbelievable. However, upon careful consideration, it made sense. During the class placement evaluation, Seal took a leisurely nap and had a late start, yet she still managed to secure third place. She was faster than Luce and Kaya in terms of scoring speed alone. Even though she was always sleepy-eyed and slept whenever she had a chance, Seal firmly held on to the third-place rank in Class A. She didn't even realize that she was a dark horse in this semester's end term evaluation. I have to do better. She vowed to beat Luce Eltania, but what if she fell down to third place? Kaya continued to move her feet without rest in search of fel cards. The sunset colors were slowly spreading across the sky. It had been 2 hours since the end of semester evaluation began. Kaya blankly stared at the scoreboard floating in the sky, her mouth hanging open. No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't understand Seal's performance. Fell, first place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +7, second place, green, Kaya Astrian fell card +2, third place, blue, Luz Eltania fell card +2, fourth place, black, Karidna Whiteclark fell card +2, fifth place, red, Mateo Jordana fell card +1, eliminations, first place, blue, Luz Eltania eliminations +62, second place, purple, Seal Karndas eliminations +12, third place, green, Kaya Astrian eliminations +8, fourth place, black, Karidna Whiteclark eliminations +6, fifth place, yellow, Tristan Humphrey eliminations +5, Y7 fell cards. Perhaps other students were perplexed by this as well. The end of semester evaluation would be over once you had collected 5 fell cards. Even if you collected more than 5 fell cards, there were no bonus points, so Professor Fernando advised against doing anything unnecessary. Once you had collected 5 fell cards, the designated location for submission would automatically appear, so Seal must have already figured out her submission location. In other words, it was meaningless for her to scrape up that many fell cards. First place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +8, first place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +9, but it didn't stop. Seal's fell card ranking was increasing at a terrifying rate. Seal Karndas, was she actually a genius beyond Luz? What a ridiculous mana perception ability. It was as if she were showing the students who were taking the end of semester evaluations, this is who I am, with those high numbers. What are you thinking, Seal Karndas? Kaya took care of her complex thoughts and selected fell on her bracelet, looking at the map of the old M.Reken Academy grounds. The purple mana grain, which represented Seal Karndas, was in a place that could be reached within 20 minutes by running from where Kaya currently was. I have no choice but to go and see myself. Kaya conjured wind magic at her feet and started moving towards the place where Seal was. Whatever Seal's intentions were, she wanted to get 5 fell cards as soon as possible, so she could turn the tables on her. Kaya's goal was to rank first in the end of semester evaluation. Realistically, it was difficult for her to choose the option of simply looking for fell cards. In that case, it would be best for her to eliminate Seal and take her fell cards. Perhaps other Class A students were thinking the same thing. That's right. It was going to be a battle of the Class A students with Seal at the center of it all. As Kaya walked past the blue rose garden, a murderous mana enveloped her entire body, triggering her survival instincts. She swallowed a breath and came to a halt in the middle of the rose garden. A woman with rose gold hair was slowly trudging towards Kaya. She was a sophisticated-looking schoolgirl with a morpho butterfly-colored hair tie. The floral path embroidered with blue roses blended well with her atmosphere, as if it existed solely for her. Above her head, water mana swirled with a clear blue light. 5 blue magic circles with a diameter of about 2 m were engraved in the air around it and followed her, ready to use water magic at any time to eliminate her opponent. Seal Karndas had been so noticeable that she had overlooked the top student in the eliminations category. She should have been paying attention to the slaughterer, the most important person in this end of semester evaluation. Tension washed over her like a tidal wave. The strongest student in the first year of the magic department was coming this way. Wind generation, wind element, 1, Kaya drew her wand and prepared for battle. Luz Eltania, the rose-gold-haired top seat, cast a glance at Kaya with her emotionless eyes. When her eyes met Kaya's, Kaya felt a chill run through her body for a moment. First seat and second seat. Only 1 rank separated them. But that one wall that stood between them was more solid than she could have imagined. Luz also stopped in her tracks. The top seat and second seat stared at each other from a distance in a flower garden full of blue roses. The tension was high. Kaya materialized a light green magic circle around her, ready to fire a spell at any moment. Luz Eltania. Are you trying to take me down too? Luz didn't answer. Kaya knew that reaction. It was the same expression that Isaac had shown her during the class placement evaluation, a look that said, "You are boring." Sir Isaac is an amazing person, so even if he did that, you shouldn't. Kaya frowned and pointed the wand in her right hand towards Luz. A light green magic circle materialized in front of the wand. It was a magic circle for Gale Fong, a 5-star wind magic. Let me ask you one thing. It looks like you are deliberately getting rid of students. What is the reason? Kaya asked in a tense voice. Then Luz closed her eyes tightly and opened them again, revealing her blue eyes, reminiscent of the sea. Ha! Her face suddenly blushed. She seemed embarrassed to answer. Kaya hadn't expected such an innocent reaction from her. Because of my friend. Just in case, I wanted to clean up anyone who might be dangerous. The expression "friend" had the power to make Luz appear vulnerable. Whenever that small ripple of emotion passed through her lips, she felt her whole body shudder and her face flush. A friend. Class A only had 5 people. Kaya knew this because she was in the same class as Luz. Aren't you friendless? It was a very rude thought, but it was true. Luz was an outsider who treated everyone coldly and was always alone. It was natural for her to not have any friends. Kaya suddenly remembered a rumor that had been going around among the students up until the end of semester's written exam. Isaac and the top seat seemed to have an unusual relationship. The top seat seemed to be interested in a commoner from Class D. The top seat, who always treated others coldly, would only smile brightly at Isaac. The top seat seemed to be constantly trying to stay by Isaac's side. And so on and so forth. Rumors were just rumors. Kaya had dismissed them as probably some kind of misunderstanding. Isaac was always a person with a deep meaning behind his actions. In the first place, judging people based on rumors was against Kaya's beliefs. Moreover, the other person involved in the rumor was Luz, who had a cold attitude towards everyone. Surely, it must be nothing more than a misunderstanding, Kaya thought. Could it be that friend? Isaac. Is she talking about him? Luz, who was aloof with everyone, harbored special feelings for Isaac. Could it be that the rumors were true? Today, she was reminded once again of how beautiful Luz was. As she pictured Luz smiling brightly only at Isaac, Kaya felt a tingle in her chest for some reason. Somehow, this fight. She felt as if she couldn't afford to lose here, in more ways than one. Luz had second thoughts when she saw Kaya, who appeared to be burning with a fierce determination. Kaya's strong will could be felt in the air and on her skin. She could be a danger to Isaac, too. I have to take care of her. It didn't matter. Luz would just have to get rid of her. The blue magic circle that had materialized around Luz started glowing even brighter. It was a showdown. The moment anyone made even the slightest movement, they would both unleash their magic on each other. It was then. Charakarik, the mana grains engraved in the sky, began to move in a frenzy. Luz and Kaya maintained their combat stances while facing one another, then glanced up to check the scoreboard. Fell, first place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +9, second place, green, Kaya Astrian fell card +2, third place, blue, Luz Eltania fell card +2, fourth place, black, Caridna Whiteclark fell card +2, fifth place, red, Mateo Jordana fell card +1, fell, first place, white, Isaac fell card +5, second place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +4, third place, green, Kaya Astrian fell card +2, fourth place, blue, Luz Eltania fell card +2, fifth place, black, Caridna Whiteclark fell card +2, Luz and Kaya stopped dead in their tracks. They weren't the only ones. Within the grounds of the old M.Raken Academy, every student who was taking the end of semester evaluation stopped. The students who were fighting ceased combat. All of the students who had been looking for their fell cards came to a halt, their mouths wide open. They looked as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They stared in disbelief at the fell card holder, who was ranked first. Isaac. He'd beaten all the top students and rose to first place in an instant. Shortly after the start of the end semester evaluation. My plan was simple. I was going to find a strong person and stick to that person. I remembered most, if not all, of the locations of the fell cards. It was game knowledge I had gained from countless hours of playing Magic Knight of M.Raken. I had even written my own game strategy walkthroughs and posted them in internet cafes. Therefore, all I had to do was find a suitable trading partner, tell them where the fell cards were, and in exchange receive a promise of protection in my share of fell cards. Of course, the trading partner should be someone who follows the principle of good faith and the duty of a righteous administrator. Kaya, who followed me without question, would be the best candidate. The problem was that time was running out, and I had no idea where she could be. However, because the carriage carrying me arrived in front of the Siren Hall, I was able to visit one of the candidates I had in mind ahead of time. She was a sleepyhead who would be holed up in a small forest until halfway through the end semester evaluation. She wasn't far from Siren Hall. When I arrived at a forest lake with clean water and fresh air, a pretty girl with wavy blue short hair caught my eye. She was sound asleep, her back against a tree. Her profile reflected in my eyes was absolutely gorgeous. The scenery around the lake was beautiful, with pure white sunlight filtering through the cracks in the leaves. She completely integrated into nature's landscape, as if she were in a painting, to the point where the title, Sleeping Beauty, T/N. In Korean, means princess sleeping in a forest, which is what is widely known as Sleeping Beauty. This small line used to describe Seal was kra, which is just, princess in a forest, but that probably wouldn't make sense to most people. Just a reminder that this story will have a lot of references to fairy tales. Came to mind. Krurung, her distinctive snores were the only thing that disturbed her elegant atmosphere. She was Seal Karndas, a freshman of the magic department. Seal Karndas, LV. Race. Human elements. Fire, water danger. Psychology. Krurung, in Magic Knight of M.Raken, you could find Seal Karndas sleeping in this forest until midway through the end semester evaluation. She awakened in the second half and joined the end semester evaluation. From then on, the difficulty of the test drastically spiked. If it's Seal, she fits my plan. She was the type of person who strictly kept her promises. After all, she was the one who was trying to keep the promise that had been passed down through the Karndas family: if you find the child of light, bring them to the divine realm. She's trustworthy, right? All right, let's go. Seal Karndas, I've come to make a deal. I strode up to Seal with confidence. At that moment, Fireball, Fire Element, 3, suddenly, a spherical flame the size of a yoga ball formed in the air, and flew towards me at the speed of a pitcher throwing a baseball. Please save me. Footnotes. Chapter 40. End of Semester Evaluation, 4, you are listening at Novel Full.audio. End of Semester Evaluation, 4, wah. Yua. I quickly threw myself to the side and avoided Seal's fireball. The heat menacingly grazed my side. I was terrified. Calm down. I didn't come here to fight you. Fireball, Fire Element, 3, then, another, fireball, flew towards me. Should I block it with Ice Wall? There was no way I could. Not only was I at a disadvantage in terms of elements, the skill gap between Seal and I was far too great. Her fireball would instantly melt my ice wall, turning me into charred meat. Once again, I dodged the incoming attack. The fireball passed me and hit the ground, then turned into orange mana before it dispersed into the wind. If I hadn't trained my athletic ability, I would have already been hit. Thank you, Night Department. Who are you? Who are you to disturb my sleep? Seal spoke, her voice still hushed. Her head was lowered, and her violet eyes only turned to look in my direction. Her expression was indifferent and lifeless, as if the world disinterested her. How about sleeping in your dormitory instead of somewhere like this? Are you picking a fight? Another fireball, the size of a yoga ball, appeared next to Seal. I quickly panicked and raised my arms. No, calm down. I came here to make a deal with you. Are you good at sensing the fell cards? Words are pointless. Seal's fireball gradually grew in size. It was big enough to cause damage even with my reflexes taken into account. Soon enough, the fireball fiercely sliced through the air towards me once more. Hey, let's talk. There was not enough time to activate Frost Explosion, because it took a while to condense the mana required for it. In the end, I used the offensive spell I was most familiar with. Frostfire, Ice Element, for I coiled icy cold flames around my hands and fired them at the fireball that flew towards me. The Frostfire engulfed the fireball, but I was struck by the aftermath. Wawa. Kuhak. The high temperature magic and the low temperature magic collided, causing an explosion of misty steam, which lightly blew my body away. The fireball lost some momentum from the collision but was still raging onward. It pierced through the steam before it ultimately crashed into the ground. I was saved by the steam explosion. My body rolled around on the ground several times, and my school uniform was soiled as a result. As I couldn't completely avoid the fireball, parts of my uniform were burned, and I was even scratched by the sharp rocks as I rolled, tearing off pieces of my uniform and cutting my skin. Only when I hit the rocks around me did my body come to a halt. Wow, I almost died for real, I coughed and cleared my throat, as I grabbed the rocks for support to stand up. My forearm that was scratched by the rocks was bloody. I could tell because I had my sleeves rolled up. Damn it. Go away. The next one will be a 4-star spell. You won't be lucky enough to avoid this one. This bitch. Would it kill you to just talk a little? I wanted to protest, but I gave up because I was scared. Ha, I didn't intend to use this, I grumbled and reached for the magic pouch inside my pocket. Then, Seal gently extended her hand towards me, perhaps feeling wary. Fire mana began to gather in front of her, and an orange magic circle appeared. I had studied that technique and remembered it. It wasn't fireball, she was going to use the 4-star spell, Sea of Fire. Sea of Fire was a spell that poured flames as if they were tsunamis. It was no wonder why it had such a large area of effect, and as she said before, it'd be impossible to avoid it as luckily as I had done before. But I had a trump card up my sleeve. Do you think I haven't figured out a single strategy for you after I'd played Magic Knight of M.Raken? Countless times. Before Seal used Sea of Fire. I swallowed dryly, and took out my trump card from my magic pouch. I saw Seal's eyes dart around, they slightly widened in shock. She was definitely surprised. Let's make a deal, Seal. What I pulled out was a navy blue pillow, a pillow of the highest quality with an ergonomic design to ensure a comfortable night's sleep. It was a heroine-only item that was available at the secret shop, which could significantly boost Seal Carnita's affinity. The item was dubbed the pillow that makes anyone pass out. For Ian, it was unnecessary. Seal examined the shape of the pillow based on her numerous naps. As a seasoned napper, she must have noticed that the pillow was of the highest quality. Her head, which had only glanced at me from the side, turned completely towards me and the fire mana that had gathered to activate Sea of Fire dispersed. This pillow appealed to her. She had slept against a hard tree without a pillow. Like a person without an umbrella on a rainy day, it was bound to be in demand. That. Where did you get that? You want it? Seal gave an affirmative answer of silence. She was too proud to nod. Like I said before, I'm here to make a deal with you. If you fulfill my request, not only will you get this pillow, but you will also receive some additional benefits. What benefits? You haven't properly detected the fell cards yet, have you? How do you know that? I asked her that earlier. She didn't listen to me at all. Fell cards were items that emitted a very weak trace of mana, so even Class A students couldn't easily detect them. Seal Karndas was no exception. Since she had already decided to take a nap, Seal planned to find a nice spot where she could take a nap since she couldn't detect the fell card. It wasn't a thoughtless action, however. In Magic Night of M. Ken, Seal awakens from her nap and joins the battle from the middle to the latter part of Act 3, Chapter 3, End of Semester Evaluation, which caused the difficulty level to spike. She decided to attack and loot students who already had fell cards, reasoning that it would be more efficient because she was stronger. I'll find fell cards for you, and give you this pillow as well. I know who you are. An inferior student from Class D with grade E mana. How could you possibly expect to find the fell cards? Come and see. Seal swept her eyes over me with suspicion. Seal Karndas, Psychology. Suspecting you of having set a trap. If you're really suspicious, just remember that you're always in a position to attack me. If you even have a sliver of doubt about my actions, then you can just eliminate me from the competition. Seal furrowed her brows and pondered for a moment before she got up and followed me. Seal's height was up to my neck. I smiled as I looked down at her. It was a capitalist smile meant to relieve my opponent's vigilance. Of course, despite my efforts, she did not reciprocate. She simply covered her mouth and yawned, with a tired expression. Hurry up. Yes, of course. I knew where the fell cards were in this forest. After walking for a while, I came to a rock shaped like a raccoon's head. Here it is. I squatted down and picked up a slightly larger rock that laid next to it. Sure enough, a fell card was there. How? Seal appeared surprised, as evident by the widening of her sleepy eyes. But I didn't touch the card. This was due to the fact that the person who made physical contact with the card was considered to be in possession of the card. That's right, physical contact. Fell cards were treated as the possession of the last person who touched them, so even if you didn't kill the opponent, you could make them your own by simply stealing the card. But I didn't have to think that far. Because once the cards are exchanged, it would end peacefully. My in-game knowledge made this all possible. You are from Class D, right? What kind of monstrous mana perception do you have? Think of it as a trade secret. Seal narrowed her eyes and stared at me suspiciously. I sensed your mana level when our magic clashed earlier, and there's no way someone as weak as you could have this kind of mana perception. What's going on? If you don't tell me, there will be bloodshed. I quickly pushed the pillow in front of her. But it's a trade secret, so it can't be helped. Everyone has secrets they want to keep. So, what kind of deal do you want to make with me? I stood up and looked at Seal. Finally, we could finally get down to business. I'll be your guide for the fell cards. Wouldn't it be better to finish this test quickly and have more time to nap? Of course, I'll even give you this pillow, but on 2 conditions. I thumped my chest. First and foremost, you must protect me. Second, you must collect all of the fell cards at once and then give me 5 of them. So I can pass the exam. Students would be targeted if they had a fell card in the end of semester evaluation, and the holding status was relayed in real time, as well as the holder's location. Moreover, there were 5 fell cards that I needed to collect. In other words, if a weakling like me tried to collect fell cards quickly, I would only be targeted by students and easily eliminated. If lost all the cards I collected, I wouldn't be able to unlock my bracelet, and have to attend the supplementary classes. As a result, I would be unable to prepare for the Thunderbird subjugation. Is that all? I nodded. Seal showed me her slender right palm, and I gently slapped my left palm against hers. Deal done. Pillow. Seal said calmly, held out her hand, and I handed her the pillow. She hugged the pillow, her cheeks flushed with pleasure. Soon, her expression melted like ice cream on a midsummer day. With Seal by my side, the search for fell cards was a breeze. Seal was always impressed whenever I found a fell card. Although she didn't show it, I could tell through psychological insight. If any students came to bother us, Seal dealt with them on her own. All I had to do was relax and act as a guide. When we found the fifth fell card, mana grains popped out of her bracelet and formed a map. One of the gleaming grains pointed to a specific location, which served as the submission point. For reference, there were a total of 10 submission points, and when we obtained the fifth fell card, one of these places would be displayed at random. I took that into account as I guided Seal to a place that wasn't too far off from it. By the way, why is Luce rampaging like this? I don't know why. I wonder what else went wrong with this scenario. In any case, I couldn't stop here. My first priority was to collect the fell cards as quickly as possible and pass this test. I relegated Luce's rampage to a lower priority. Who are you, really? Seal inquired when we had found the seventh fell card. It was the time when we had entered the honeycomb building that held 2 fell cards. It was a large central hall. The interior of the building, which once boasted luxurious facilities, was now rusted and worn with the passage of time. Seal walked alongside me, clutching the pillow I had given her. With a voice as cold as frost, Seal asked. Seal Karndas, Psychology. Suspects that you are a strong person hiding your skills. It seemed that Seal had thought about it a lot while walking around with me. Even though she said that I was weak at first. What is your true identity? You can't have such great mana perception with only a tiny bit of mana. Mana perception is directly related to the absolute amount of maximum mana that one possesses. Isn't that too harsh? I'm level 57, a level that can compete against the top class C students. Well, it wasn't unreasonable. From Seal's point of view, who was talented even compared to Class B students, the expression that my mana was at the level of a speck of dust could be seen as a reasonable statement. It's impossible to hide one's mana. But it's also impossible for you to have this level of mana perception with your mana. How can such a contradiction exist? Seal shot me a cold glare. The only way for that to be possible is if you can hide your mana. There's no way you reach the level of an archwizard at your age, and it's impossible to bribe the proctors because of the pact. There are 2 fell cards here. I gave out the information as a way of telling her to shut up, and as expected, Seal looked puzzled. It wasn't just one. As I thought, you can sense even that. I shook my head. When I first entered this building, I noticed the shape of the grass in the front yard. I washed my eyes and looked around, but there was no sign of anyone having walked on it, which meant that the 2 cards must still be there. Tisk. Seal Karndas, Psychology. Feels inferior to you. Seal had no interest in those weaker than herself. But now she was starting to harbor an inferiority complex towards me. She even clicked her tongue. I'm a background character, aren't I? Let's hurry up and find the rest. You're walking faster all of a sudden, you talk too much. Seal disregarded my words. I kept my mouth shut and quietly followed her will. Even if this was a transactional relationship, I knew there was bound to be a certain amount of power involved. It wasn't like she wasn't going to fulfill her obligations anyway. We found the 2 fell cards in the building. First place, purple, Seal Karndas fell card +9, was engraved on the scoreboard. Even Kaya, who was in second place right now, only had 2 cards. I know it was my own work, but that was some real good aggro. I'm done now, Seal said after she found the 9th fell card. The place where I found the card was a spacious hall reminiscent of a wedding hall. The overall atmosphere was elegant and full of dignity. The walls were adorned with a beautiful gold and white design, with green vines that dotted along the walls, and on those vines bloomed brilliantly colored flowers that resembled passion flowers. It was a place that hadn't been maintained, and the signs of age were evident, which gave it a distinct feel. Seal and I stood in front of the podium, while we faced each other. Anyone who saw us would think that we were having a simple wedding. Of course, I was currently dressed in a dusty school uniform that was far from wedding attire. There's 1 card left, right? This card is yours. I'll find the other one on my own. Perhaps it was her wounded pride. Well, it was understandable when one considered the fact that the guy she deemed to be inferior to herself showed an incredible mana perception that was incomparable to her own. Of course, that was just Seal's speculation. I didn't mention anything about having found the fell cards using my mana perception. I was in a position where I couldn't come up with any other reason, so I didn't deny it. For now, take this. Seal handed me a flimsy stack of cards. The submission location was random. Even I didn't know where my submission location would appear, though I figured it would be best to get the fell cards here as soon as possible and go. I received the stack of cards and counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Outside the window, I could hear the collision of mana grains. First place, white, Isaac fell card +5, appeared on the scoreboard engraved in the sky. Mana grains also flowed from my bracelet, and formed a map which marked my submission location. Luckily, it was the closest one to me. A distance I could reach in less than 20 minutes if I ran. Let's go. Yeah. Seal nodded, and her face turned serious as she hugged the pillow I'd given her with both arms. It must have been because she couldn't predict what kind of mayhem would unfold from now on.